This video was sponsored by Helix. Fight videos are an undeniable staple of viral internet stuff. Bum fights, world star, Twitter clip accounts. They've just got this universal primal appeal that, all the big-brained individuals want to act like they're above looking at this sort of thing, but I mean, somebody's looking at it. And one of the biggest subgenres of internet viral fight videos is the story of the man who had just had enough. A rowdy woman hits him one too many times and he just snaps and goes full equal rights, equal lefts. There's many such tales, but one of the most legendary comes not from World Star, not for some terrible vertical video, but from mainstream Indian television. A clip that gave birth to the famous line,
"How can you snap? How can you snap? How can she snap?"
But there's a lot more to this story than you probably know about, so today I want to take a look at the legend of How Can She Slap? The viral video How Can She Slap originates from an Indian TV show called Dadagiri, which debuted in 2008. Dadagiri promoted itself as television's meanest game show. It was a little bit like American Gladiators meets Fear Factor meets Jeopardy, all while enduring tons of verbal abuse from the hosts. During its first season, subtitled Beat the Bullies, contestants had to compete in a number of challenges enforced by the aforementioned bullies. There was Vishal, the Beast. He had the contestants test their might by enduring physical challenges. Then there was Sherman, the Mindstein, and I have no idea what a Mindstein is supposed to mean, but it seems like it's a smart kind of thing. Like you have a good mind, but also you're Einstein. And it makes sense because his part of the show was about having contestants test their wits by answering questions. And then there was Esha the Goddess, who you probably recognize because it was she who slapped. Her whole bit was making the contestants perform mentally taxing and sometimes gross challenges. Losers would then be subjected to gross concoctions by a highly flamboyant chef named Juicy.
Magical power.
The infamous How Can I Slap clip happened during a season 1 episode and involved a contestant named Ravi Bhatia. Anyway, let's take a look at it.
Are you sure? क्योंकि ऐसे लगता है ये लोग bad hairdo convention के लिए आए हैं. What the f is it with this stupid sideburns of yours? Are you in some sort of a time capsule? 60s में पहुंच गए हो? What is it with those faces? What are you doing?
For something that prided itself in being television's meanest game show, these are some pretty weak-ass insults. She would have been better off pulling out something about the jerk store. I mean, granted, it was 2008, it was a different time, Mark Zuckerberg hadn't yet started rocking his turf bangs, so maybe the bar for what constituted as a haircut so bad that it belongs at the bad haircut convention was simply a lower bar. But either way, both of the fellows were staying pretty quiet and really no-selling these insults. But then Ravi, that cheeky fuck, look at that mischievous, cherubic smile. He just couldn't keep his mouth shut.
Actually, the thing is that we don't want to talk with you, actually.
Why don't you go and f off then?
You go.
And there it was. The most consequential no you in all of recorded history.
How can you snap? How can you snap?
Mad or what, bloody?
How can she snap? How can she snap me?
How can you slap, bloody? Fucker! Bastard! Bloody bastard! How did
How
you
can she slap me?
You bastard! How did you enter? I'll fuck your brain right now! You fucking bastard! I'll fucking kill bastard! Arrest him! Mother chode branch.
Who would have ever thought that a show whose entire premise was about bullying, a show that prided itself on being the meanest game show on TV, would escalate into an all-out brawl? I definitely didn't see that coming. And a lot of you are probably thinking, I know I thought this back when I originally saw it, that this was all just a scheme to promote the show, right? It's very on brand. No, actually, this was actually kept under wraps and not supposed to be seen by anybody that wasn't there that day. This recording would remain tucked away in the archives until 4 months later, September 2008, when a member of the crew leaked it. From there, it would make it to TMZ and go viral all over the Western world. Uploads of the clip would get millions of views and tons of remixes and YTMNDs
How can she snap?
Fuck off then!
How can she slap?
Fuck off then!
were made at the time because that's just what people did in 2008. And this was great news for Ravi, who was still recovering from the severe ass beating that brought him to tears. After the How Can She Slap clip went viral, he spoke to the Times of India. 19-year-old Ravi Bhatia is all over news channels past few days. This small-town boy has dashed off a legal notice to the makers of Dadagiri. He's upset with what happened on the reality show. Reality shows may have their fixed scripts and sensational turn of events, but Ravi is in no mood to take things lying down. This incident occurred 4 months ago. The participants of the show had to pass through the litmus test of abuses and spats, and it was all scripted. We were all given our parts where 70% was to be said as is, and 30% would be improvisation, says Ravi. There was this girl called Isha, opposite me, who was supposed to abuse me and I was to retaliate, but calmly. In other words, there is no mention of any kind of physical contact in this thing, so when he said, how can she slap, he literally meant, how is she allowed to slap? This wasn't a part of the deal. After a while, when it came to improvisations, I presumed she was out of words and came and slapped me hard. I was shocked, and in the heat of the moment, I slapped her back. That led to the entire unit of about 70 people jumping on me, beating me black and blue. It was a miracle in itself that I managed to escape from there, he says. So how did this incident get flashed to the media now? Luckily for me, somehow the tapes got leaked out and they were being shown on all the channels. I got myself a copy from one of the news channels and was happy that finally I acquired the proof to support me. And this time I will not be quiet. Just because they have power, it doesn't give them the license to pull down people. I have sent a legal notice to the producers and asked for an apology publicly for defamation. And although I haven't been able to find 100% confirmation of this, it is widely reported that they settled out of court in Ravi's favor. But what happened after all this? This is Ravi Bhatia now. These days, he is a successful TV actor with a number of roles under his belt, most famously Salim in the historical drama Jodha Akbar, which I almost definitely just mispronounced. At this point, the whole How Can She Slap thing is just a minor footnote in a much larger career, kind of like pointing to Aaron Paul's appearance on The Price is Right. As for the show itself, Dadagiri wound up being a huge success, one of the highest rated shows of its time. It lasted for 4 seasons and most of the cast would reprise their roles. However, Esha was replaced. And that's the story of How Can She Slap. Honestly, I kinda wish American TV was a little bit meaner. I would fuck with that. This video was sponsored by Helix. Helix is a premium mattress and a box company that makes mattresses designed to fit your unique needs and preferences based on your body type and sleep style. I've had my Helix mattress now for a little over a year and it's still some of the best sleep I've had. The neck pain I had been experiencing went away pretty quickly and it's yet to return. The first thing you do is go to their website and take the sleep quiz. Personally, I like a soft mattress and I'm a side sleeper, so Helix determined that their Sunset mattress was the best option for me. Once Helix matches you up with the right mattress, it's delivered right to your door for free in the US. Comes rolled up in a box and it's super easy to set up yourself. And you get a 100-night sleep trial to see if Helix is right for you. That's more than 3 months. And if you don't like the mattress, they'll pick it up right from your door and issue a full refund. If you do like it, each Helix mattress has a 10-year warranty. You know, it's February, so a lot of you guys are gonna be banging and whatnot, so you gotta have a good mattress for that, right? Can't have some old piece of trash with the springs hanging out. Just click the link below or go to helixsleep.com/wang. You'll get up to $200 off your Helix Sleep mattress as well as 2 free pillows. As a child, one of my great pleasures in life was staying home sick from school. I remember it vividly, sitting in front of my old Sony Trinitron TV with a can of Coke playing Street Fighter 2, watching The Price is Right. But perhaps the biggest treat of all was the low-budget local commercials. Like over here, we had 1-800-VICTIM, who features rappers rapping about injury lawsuits.
I was hit by a car that wasn't nice. 1-800-VICTIM.
Or the US Window Factory, keeping out those pesky bees.
You should have called US Window Factory.
Go back, it's a trap. They bought windows from the US Window Factory with screens.
I used to love these kinds of commercials, probably more than the shows themselves. I mean, you can only watch so much Price is Right before it gets a little samey. So it really took me back in 2011 when a commercial just like this became one of the year's biggest memes.
There's a leopard feeding on an impala out on my deck.
Nope.
just Chuck Testa with another realistic mount.
But there's a lot more to this viral ad than meets the eye, so for this episode of Tales from the Internet, let's talk about Chuck Testa.
A free 15-minute call can get you compensation for your injuries. Call 1-800-VICTIM-2.
If there's one thing that woodsy boomers and Forever 21 coffee witches can agree on, it's that taxidermy is awesome. And to me, and probably a lot of you, there's one man that's synonymous with taxidermy, and that man is Chuck Testa. And Chuck's interest in taxidermy began in his childhood. A native of California, he would often see stuffed animal props as a part of movie sets. But he wouldn't become a professional taxidermist until later on in life. Working at his father's store, he found an advertisement for a bird taxidermy kit in a magazine. He ordered it, and that was the beginning of him pursuing taxidermy as a hobby for the next few years. Finally, in 1987, he took the dive and opened up his own shop, Ojai Valley Taxidermy. And although Ojai Valley locals knew who he was throughout the decades, it wasn't until 2011 that he would become a worldwide sensation. It was that August that a commercial for his shop was uploaded to YouTube.
You probably thought this deer was alive, and this coyote was alive, and this pheasant was alive. Nope, they're not. They're dead. They've been taxidermized by Chuck Testa. Ojai Valley Taxidermy. I specialize in the most lifelike dead animals anywhere. Period.
The commercial involves scenes of people being fooled by obviously taxidermied animals, until all of a sudden Chuck would appear out of nowhere and correct them.
Nope, it's just Chuck Testa. Nope, Chuck Testa. Nope.
It's got that perfect bad local commercial charm of awkward cinematography, strangely delivered lines, and text pop-ups. But despite its obvious charm, the commercial would sit on Chuck's channel relatively unnoticed. Until a month later, it was posted on Reddit r/videos by a user named Luna McLovin. The post would accumulate nearly 4,000 upvotes, which is not terribly much by today's standards, but back then, it was definitely enough to give the video a major boost. And this was a boost that would gain more and more momentum as people were sharing it with their friends and the video was posted to mainstream news sites. The repetition of the line, "Nope, Chuck Testa," stuck easily and instantly became a meme, getting a bunch of variations of people seeing an object, only for it to turn out to be Chuck Testa. Mufasa is alive? Nope, Chuck Testa. Jesus has risen?
Nope, Chuck Testa.
Scumbag Steve's at my door? Nope, it's Chuck Testa. Alright, seriously, that might actually be the worst meme I've ever seen in my life. Dumbledore? Nope, Chuck Testa. For a while, this was one of those phrases that you just couldn't avoid. I remember being on tour around this time, and it basically amounted to a month of traveling around the country with people trying to find excuses to go, "Nope, Chuck Testa. Hey guys, here's your pay for the night."
Nope, Chuck Testa.
And because of this commercial, a lot of people wound up sharing weird local commercials from their areas.
So bring it in and get your cash today.
I'm Little John. Don't mail it in.
Bring it in and get your cash today.
However, there were some issues that people had with the Chuck Testa commercial. One of the big ones was that Chuck had what appeared to some people to be a Nazi hat in the commercial. Anyone else notice the SS Totenkopf skull on his hat? He looks like the kind of guy who purchases most of his clothing at an Army-Navy surplus store. Why the Nazi hat? I don't think too many people know what it is. I saw that too. What a strange man. Yeah, it's an SS hat to be more specific, with the Totenkopf or Death's Head logo. Funny commercial, but I was instantly distracted by the horrible hat. Chuck Testa, a Nazi? And I really started to like this guy, frowny winky face. Several people commented on his video about the hat, and eventually he responded. "Hi everyone, thanks for the buzz regarding the commercial. Just wanted to address the pin on my hat. I'm part of the California historical group who does WW2 reenactments. I'm part of the US 2nd Infantry Division, and I retrieved the pin in a battle against the 12th SS. I apologize if this offended anyone. Hope you can enjoy the video for what it is. Nope, Chuck So he wasn't a Nazi, he was a guy pretending to kill Nazis who kept the Nazi stuff as a treasure, kind of like an ear in Diablo. And another issue that people had with the commercial was its authenticity. Although many people didn't notice, especially since most people saw it removed from its original context, if you looked at the description in the YouTube video, you would see that it was actually created by the YouTubers Rhett and Link. Rhett and Link had gotten big on YouTube very early in the game, starting in 2006, and by 2009 they were producing a series called I Love Local Commercials. In I Love Local Commercials, they created deliberately bad low-budget commercials for real small businesses. You've probably seen some of these commercials, my favorite one being Red House, where black people and white people buy furniture.
At the Red House.
I'm black and I love the Red House.
I'm white and I love the Red House.
I'm a black woman and I love the Red House.
I am white and the Red House is for me.
I'm sure some of you were disappointed to find out that that one isn't, let me not say fake, because it's a real commercial for a real business, but deliberately bad, as opposed to accidentally bad. The YouTube series was so successful that they wound up getting a show on IFC. The show was called Commercial Kings and took their concept a step further, documenting the production of these commercials. Chuck was chosen to have one of the first commercials in the series, and you know what? It almost didn't happen because he thought it was a scam. He explains in an interview with the VC Star, the show's producers approached Testa in May and asked him to record a short video about who he is and about his business. If chosen, Neil and McLaughlin would direct the commercial for the business for free. Testa, who rarely watches cable TV, said he thought the offer was a hoax. I didn't understand what they wanted at first, Testa said. I told them, look, I'm broke and I can't afford a commercial. Call somebody else. I thought it was a scam. Ultimately, they did manage to convince Chuck Testa of their legitimacy, and the production of Chuck's commercial would be documented in the 4th episode of the show, which aired in July of 2011 and was entitled Taxidermy Comedy. And because of the nature of these commercials, there's sometimes confusion over whether or not the businesses are real, a question that was addressed in an interview with BuzzFeed. The episode of Commercial Kings with Chuck Testa's Ohio Valley taxidermy ad first aired back in July, right? Rhett. Yeah, I believe it was one of the first episodes of the season, which began in July. As for the delay between airing and the meme, what we do is we make a local commercial for free, which we then include as a part of the show, and we give it to the client. We upload some of the commercials to our YouTube channel, but not all the time. I mean, people see this funny video online and then they see that it was made by a couple of comedians, and they sometimes assume that's just a sketch. But these are real commercials for real businesses. But for some people, it didn't matter that it was a real commercial for a real business. Just knowing that it was deliberately tailored to be the way that it was completely ruined the experience for some people. I've seen a number of their shows, and basically they just crib Jared Hess's humor and are supremely disrespectful to the people they feature and towns they visit. They're classic dipshit hipster cultural tourists who disrespect and ruin everything they touch. I can't really find this genuinely funny because here's a viral baiting low-budget mock award commercial for a local business owner made by sophisticated advertisers to resemble a genuine low-budget awkward commercial made by unsophisticated non-advertisers. I know what you mean, but I still enjoy them. I guess it's mostly doublethink on my part, recognizing that they're not genuine while still appreciating them as if they were. Yeah, doublethink was exactly what I was thinking of when I watched it. I think it's fine for what it is, but it's not the same as something genuinely, organically funny. And my thoughts on this are kind of mixed, because it's a lot like how I really like old bad horror movies that weren't bad on purpose, but then you have this whole wave of newer bad on purpose horror movies that are trying to recapture the same aesthetic, but they're a little too self-aware. But I think in this specific case, these bad commercials do a much better job of capturing the original aesthetic, and obviously, they wind up fooling a lot of people. And as far as this goes as a marketing concept, I find it a lot less egregious than how we're bombarded by corporations on Twitter trying to seem relatable and just like us, and oh look at these guys, epic memers over here. Oh look, Arby's wrote Doom with a cardboard box, they're just like me. I'd much rather prefer to see a small business benefit from an actual entertaining piece of content. And Chuck himself was thrilled by the reaction. A few days later, he posted a thank you video to his YouTube channel.
Hello, Internet. No, Chuck Testa here. Just want to say I do exist. This is what I do, and it's really my phone number. And I just want to thank all you guys for the support, interest, and all the comments, and all the positive stuff that's been going on. So once again, thank you, and thank you, Rhett and Link.
Although in a subsequent interview with BuzzFeed, he did admit that at first the commercial didn't do all that much to increase his business. Your commercial has made you into something of a star on the web. How has becoming an internet meme impacted your business? It happened so fast. I haven't really gotten new clients since the commercial. I mean, I've been doing this for years and the internet has changed things for taxidermy already. When I started, it used to be really competitive. If you ran into another guy who was in the business, you'd compete over everything. Now everybody's sharing their techniques and teaching each other. So I've seen how that's changed things. I've had a lot of clients and done a lot of really good projects for public displays and universities. A year later, after the effect the commercial had on his business was more fully realized, he would come to Reddit and do an AMA. Hi, thanks for doing this. I was just wondering how much your advertisement that went viral impacted your business and your personal life. It really impacted me for about 6 months and has increased business about 30%. I have done a lot of great things as a result of the video. For example, going all over the country. Boston was my favorite. Next it looks like New York, San Francisco. A lot of Europe has enjoyed the video and I even have a fan club in Romania. How did you come up with the whole Nope thing? Do you still have a business? If so, has the video helped? Rhett and Link created the Nope thing, and my business is still going strong. I get about 10 fan calls a day and a lot more on the weekends. I actually had a stalker who really hated me and sent death threats and the FBI was involved. That was interesting. Ojai Valley Taxidermy is still open to this day, and throughout the years, Chuck has been posting to YouTube. He's made a number of tutorial videos and behind the scenes videos documenting his taxidermy process. He's also made a few more appearances with Rhett and Link.
You probably thought this zebra was alive. No, Chuck Testa.
As well as multiple rap videos, including his own song, Nope, featuring Sabotage.
You probably thought I was here to do taxidermy. Nope, I'm here to rap.
If you ask me how I made it.
He appeared in another rap video in 2019, Young Gravy's Whip a Tesla, which references him in the lyrics. Because I'm pretty sure that the only thing that rhymes with Tesla is Testa, so where else are you gonna go with that? So although he had no idea what he was getting into at all, Chuck Testa, I feel, wound up making more of his viral fame than most people wind up doing. The streets of Phoenix, Arizona have a problem. Crime. Violence. Disorder. The inmates are running the asylum. By asylum, of course, I mean the Valley Metro rail system. How are law-abiding citizens supposed to get to work on time with the looming threat of villainy hanging over their heads? How could there be justice when good men stand by and do nothing? It seemed like all was lost, until amidst the chaos, one man chose to spring into action. The Light Rail Avenger. The Subway Samurai. This is the legend.
It's folded, tempered, and it does its job.
Of Kairo Seijuro. Fight videos are probably one of my greatest guilty pleasures on the internet. UFC is cool and all, but to me, nothing quite beats the enjoyment of watching two completely untrained jamokals swinging wildly at each other while some chick screams in the background. Oh my god, Justin, I thought you were above such uncivilized things. I thought this was an intellectual YouTube channel. Come on. But sometimes you wind up in a situation with those videos where it's not really a fair fight. Either there's a big size differential, or people are getting ganged up on, and then you have people in the comments who are like, how can you sit there and film this? Why don't you stop them? And then they talk about all the heroic things they would have done to break up the fight, you know, from behind the safety of their keyboards. In reality, most of these people wouldn't do shit, and if they did, they might get the worst end of it, because that just seems to be what happens when you go and break up fights. That is, unless you happen to have a sword. And that's exactly what happened on October 13th of 2012, when this clip started to go viral. It begins with a bunch of guys yelling at each other on a train, and eventually it escalates into a fight where you have two guys ganging up on one guy. That guy is getting his ass beat until all of a sudden our hero whips out his katana and charges at them. Everybody freaks the fuck out, the attackers run off the train, and the day is saved. So this clip starts spreading all around the internet, it's getting news coverage, and people are asking, who was this sword-wielding vigilante?
That guy was there for a reason. You know, I feel like, you know, there's no accidents.
Yeah.
And he was totally there for a reason, and I feel like, hey, you know, dude, wherever you are, rock on.
It was NBC 12 News of Phoenix, Arizona that wound up catching up with him and producing the interview that would be the peak of his viral fame. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Kairo Seijuro.
It was 2-on-1. None of them saw Kairo Seijuro move around behind them.
To them, they probably thought I was just moving out of the way, but I was actually setting up to where their blind spot was.
I can't quite put my finger on why, but he doesn't really look like a Kairo Seijuro. Maybe more like a Steve or something.
This is about what you saw on the train. It's folded, tempered, and it does its job.
Kairo says the three men on the train are lucky they ran.
I already had a full 5-stage plan ready to take everyone out. And anybody else who got involved, just in case. That's just the way I do things. If he had gone on me, I was planning to go in completely, drop the sword down, and then completely cut it, completely gape him open.
He definitely just visualized one of those anime fight scenes where a sword goes through a guy, but nothing happens, and then all of a sudden the top half and the bottom half slide apart.
And my family couldn't handle me. I had a surprisingly strange affinity for sharp objects, particularly kitchen knives, when I was a kid.
So he traded in the knives for a lifetime of studying the sword. The katana goes with him everywhere.
I actually carry this because I've become a little bit more dangerous without it than with it. So it's more of a restraint mechanism than a safety blanket.
And it was after this interview came out that Kairo Seijuro was elevated to true meme status. And the reaction was kind of interesting to me because it was kind of like a duality to it. On one hand, it's getting the kind of mockery that mall ninja weeb shit just tends to get. And he's also getting a bunch of praise heaped on him, a lot of it unironic. He did legitimately save someone's ass, and he got to live out this hero fantasy that most weebs only ever get to daydream about. How can you not root for a guy like that? Well, there was at least one person who wasn't rooting for him. It was on October 23rd of 2012, as Kairo Seijuro was reaching his viral peak, that a YouTube channel named Samurai Guy Truth was created. On this day, Samurai Guy Truth uploaded 4 videos exposing secrets about Kairo Seijuro. The first video exposed the squalor he lived in and had this caption: "The day I filmed this, he had cooked our last bit of pasta, all our food, and put a note on it saying we are not allowed to eat it because we leave dishes everywhere." So I decided to reveal the truth about this hypocritical way of living and making your roommates who buy your food starve.
Hello YouTube, we're gonna find out how clean my brother is because he likes to say we're really messy. We're so freaking messy, woo. Okay, here's his room. Okay, let's get a first glance at everything in the room. Total mess. As you can clearly see, he's a very clean person, so clean. Alright, let's see. He likes to say we leave dishes and don't clean our own dishes. Let's see. There's a plate, a bowl, a spoon, a cup, garbage, 2 jugs, by the way. 2 jugs. More garbage. As you can clearly see, garbage. More garbage. Oh look, that's a quick thing. Oh look, more cups. Oh look, more garbage.
The second video shows Kairo comparing swords with a strange man at what appears to be a motel. His name is really Kenneth. I call him Kenny. He goes by Kairo, because he thinks it's Japanese for energy. Here's your hero. Watch the rest of the videos. I'm sure that steel does not come in 181D. JS Kairo. I have to bullshit with him to keep him from being a pissy, whiny asshole. BTW. This is the only good day of our life. And the next 2 videos get a bit more serious. BTW, this was over him not wanting to admit he lied about something he was caught dead lying about. His past. I'm his brother. I know him and he never lived in Japan for 15 years in a Japanese death squad. He was in a foster home because he was abusing our younger brother and chasing me with knives.
And my family couldn't handle me. I had a surprisingly strange affinity for sharp objects, particularly kitchen knives, when I was a kid.
And then there's a final video entitled Abusing His GF. Before I moved in, this was every day. I had to sit in fear knowing there was nothing I could do but take the verbal route afterwards. They are not together anymore. Someone needs a wake-up call. He's an evil person. It should be noted that in this video, neither Kairo nor the girlfriend are seen. All there is audio of a fight in another room. After these videos were released, the Phoenix New Times attempted to contact both Kairo and the man claiming to be his brother. Neither of them responded. However, they did manage to cover the origin story behind his name. A dating profile set up by Kairo sort of explains the naming issue. Despite all comments I've received from people out here, I do still carry my katana I was raised into it by my master Hiko, and I adopted him as my father figure since he practically raised 14 years of my life anyway, and named me Kairo, so I took up his last name Seijuro for honorific reasons. That, and it sweets my character better. Sorry, most people ask. It should be noted that Hiko Seijuro is a character from the anime Rurouni Kenshin. Could it be that perhaps Kairo Seijuro didn't spend 14 years from when he was 9 years old training to be a swordsmaster in Japan, and maybe, just maybe, he got it from an anime? I don't know, let's call it a 50-50 shot. Ultimately though, most people were unaware of this attempt to expose him, as these videos over the course of about 6 years only received a few thousand views. And over the course of the next few years, the video would pop up from time to time and he would go in and out of viral fame, but it was the most hardcore followers who were watching him on Facebook. And it was on Facebook that you could follow all of his exploits, such as his heavily detailed dreams about Inuyasha, and his sword technique demonstrations. Or the time he got kicked out of a restaurant for bringing his sword in. Good news, I've been kicked out of Main Street Restaurant. Indefinitely. All because the chooses to single me out owner made an issue from nothing about Kaze Toki, whom I routinely placed behind me covered by my coat out of courtesy of the other customers, and his no weapons policy, except I called him a hypocrite since there are knives at every table, people with utility/work/personal knives, and police that are fully loaded and armored plus taser that come to eat. And I ordered at least $40 worth of food, was still waiting too, and he threatened to call the police if I didn't leave. And it was drenching wet outside and was still soaked. I may just kill this pitiful hypocrite. Seriously, his disrespectful behavior almost got to me. And if you were to visit his Facebook page today, you would notice something else. At the top of his profile, it reads, "Remembering Kairo Seijuro." Now, I have absolutely no idea how Facebook knows when you die, but they are correct. It was in September of 2016 that Kairo Seijuro, the Light Rail Avenger, met with his tragic demise. Clear Lake, California. A man known for carrying a Japanese sword with him everywhere drowned in Clear Lake after falling out of his kayak while on the way to an island to practice his swordsmanship. The body of Kenneth Anthony Jacinto, 30, of Clear Lake, was recovered on Monday according to Lieutenant Steve Brooks of the Lake County Sheriff's Office. Brooks said Jacinto was reported missing on September 2nd after falling out of his kayak in the water off of Clear Lake. At about 6:15 p.m. that day, Central Dispatch received a call about a boating accident that occurred offshore of Austin Beach, Brooks said. Brooks said the report came in from a 16-year-old female who had been in a boat with Jacinto. The team told authorities that she and Jacinto, who she identified as her swordsmanship teacher, had launched a small kayak from Austin Beach, Brooks said. A 30-year-old man kayaking to an isolated island with a 16-year-old girl might sound a little bit creepy, but I'm not gonna make any assumptions. I mean, if there's anybody in the world who would be going through all this trouble just to teach someone the art of the blade, it's this guy. So Kairo Seijuro and his young apprentice are paddling to this island, when all of a sudden a strong gust of wind blows it over and knocks them in the water. They try to return to it, but the wind blows it away even further. And this was a notoriously dangerous body of water that had already claimed 4 lives that year. But not wanting to leave their swords behind, Kairo Seijuro tried to swim back to the kayak. But it was to no avail, and eventually, as his body gave up on him, he yelled out the word, "No," and disappeared underwater, never to be heard from again. The girl was able to safely swim back to dry land, where she told the police what happened. The police went to look for Kairo Seijuro, but they were unable to find him. They were only able to recover the kayak and the swords. It was 3 whole days later that Kairo Seijuro was found by another kayaker. And thus ends the tragic tale of Kairo Seijuro, the Light Rail Avenger. By April of 2003, MTV's Jackass had already been off the air for over a year. However, it was still as popular as ever. Fans of the series took to the internet hoping to find something that they hadn't seen before. A deleted segment. A new segment. And on April 13th of 2003, some users of the P2P file sharing service Kazaa thought they came across the Holy Grail. It was on that day that a file entitled Jackass_Star Wars_funny.wmv surfaced. However, this was not a new Jackass segment. In fact, this was something far greater. There's no way you haven't seen the Star Wars Kid video by now. And you've probably seen the one where they edited a lightsaber into his hand too. Or any of the countless other edits that exist of it. This is hands down one of the most popular videos that has ever existed on the internet. And due to how much less centralized the internet was at the time, it could be a little hard to place an exact number on how many people saw it. Some estimates place it as high as 900 million views. These views, of course, are scattered around a bunch of different file sharing services like Kazaa and LimeWire and whatnot, and also a bunch of different websites. One of the most common websites that people saw it on was Waxy.org. The original post by Waxy's owner Andy Bayo was on April 29th of 2003. Star Wars Kid. If you're going to videotape your Star Wars fighting skills on a school camera, remember to remove the cassette when you're done. Watch this embarrassingly good video. Andy's original direct upload to the website received 1.1 million views in under a month, which was completely insane for any video at that time. And it's also important to note that this upload, now named StarWarsKid.wmv, was the first noted use of the phrase Star Wars Kid. It had previously gone by names such as Star Wars Guy, or as I said in the intro to the video, Jackass Star Wars Funny. But it was the name coined by Andy Bayo that would be the name that would stick with the meme permanently. And as you would expect with this kind of thing, the more popular the Star Wars Kid got, the more people became interested in finding out who the kid behind the video was. And there was very little that could be found out about the video until Andy was contacted by the kids who uploaded the original. My research revealed few details until the culprits finally contacted me. His name is Guy Slane, a 15-year-old 10th grader living in Quebec. Originally recorded onto an 8mm tape on November 4th, 2002 in the school's studio, the video was never meant to be seen by anyone. After Guy Slane returned the borrowed videotape to his friend, the video sat in a basement for months. On April 19th, 2003, Guy Slane's friends stumbled on the tape's secret contents and immediately shared it with friends. They thought it would be a funny prank to encode the video and upload it to Kazaa. And as a result of this communication, Andy was also able to obtain contact info for the Star Wars Kid. Since the Star Wars Kid Guy Slane was a resident of Quebec who primarily spoke French, Andy got his friend Jish, who also spoke French, to do an interview with him. In this interview, it's discovered that Guy Slane was well aware of the video's popularity, and how couldn't he be? He also mentioned that he was impressed by people's edits of the video, and he was surprised that people would make such a big deal out of such a little thing. During this interview, Jish also asked Guy Slane about his interest in technology and asked him about what gadgets he might be interested in, to which Guy Slane responded that he was interested in possibly buying an iPod. which at the time was on its 3rd generation, still making its ascent up to becoming the world's must-have music player. The revelation that Guy Slane was interested in iPod led Andy Baio to begin a fundraiser for him. Andy asked his readers if they were interested in contributing to a fund to buy the Star Wars kid an iPod, and they far exceeded their goals. So with this money, Andy was able to send an iPod to Guy Slane as well as a gift certificate for the additional money. Guy Slane, in return for the countless hours of entertainment you've given us and the hardships you've had to face, please accept this 30GB iPod for your trouble. A very large gift certificate to Future Shop with the remainder of the funds is in the mail. Remember, the internet loves you. May the force be with you always. Sincerely, Andrew Baio, Jish Mukherjee, and the 376 donators to the fund. And the Star Wars kid continues to grow as a mainstream cultural phenomenon. He gets a petition where people want him to be in Episode 3 of Star Wars. He winds up being referenced in shows like Family Guy and Arrested Development. And he even appears as a secret character in Tony Hawk's Underground 2. And although this sounds like all kinds of nice positive stuff and all kinds of good things are happening for this kid, it never really works out that cleanly. Especially not with internet fame. And in 2003, there really was no blueprint for how to deal with sudden overnight internet fame. Not that, it's ever easy for anybody to deal with, but back then they were just, they were charting out the territory. As you probably know, one of the biggest things that comes along with doing basically anything on the internet is being on the receiving end of profoundly exaggerated levels of hatred. Although a lot of people felt good about it and they felt like they connected to him or related to him in some way, they felt a bit uplifted by seeing a person just let themselves go and not care about anything like that, a lot of people weren't feeling that way. At school, Reza suffered endless mockery. He lost his friends. Students would exaggerate his moves from the video and climb onto tabletops to insult him. It soon became impossible for me to attend class, he told McLean's. But worse, far worse, were the comments he read about himself online. One commenter called him a pox on humanity. Others suggested he commit suicide. A pox on humanity over some kid swinging a stick around. That's like, if someone caught you singing in the shower and they said, "You're everything that's wrong with society." Just, a tiny bit of an exaggeration. And on top of all the abuse from classmates and strangers online, he was also getting bombarded with interview requests from different publications, TV shows, everything, and he felt that if he were to accept one of these interviews, it would just make everything worse. All of these pressures started to become too much for him to handle, and it eventually led to a lawsuit. The parents of Guy Slane Reza, the Quebec teenager who became a celebrity this spring after classmates posted on the internet a video of him mimicking a Star Wars character, alleged that their son was so humiliated by the experience that he had to get psychiatric care. In a statement of claim filed last week in their hometown of Trois-Rivières, I'm sorry, French people. The Rezas say that Guy Slane was so widely mocked at his private high school that he dropped out. He had to finish the session at Pavillon Arc-en-Ciel, a ward specializing in child psychiatry at the Trois-Rivières Regional Hospital Center. Guy Slane will be under psychiatric care for an indefinite amount of time, the statement of claim says. The stigma of mental illness can generate social prejudices, having severe consequences on the young man, including making it more difficult for him to enroll in the school of his choice or get a job, or even forcing him to change his name, the document added. The Rezas are now seeking $225,000 in damages from the parents of 4 teenagers. Michael Caron, Francois Labarre, Jérôme Laflamme, and Jean-Michel Rolt. I apologize to any French viewers I have that had to listen to me pronounce those names, or any of the towns in that story. And there were some people who were really disappointed to hear about this lawsuit. That's too bad his parents are suing. Kinda put a damper on the whole thing. His parents are suing after all you guys have done for him. Damn, that's whack. And others supported him. I'm glad to hear how well this went. Thanks again, Andy and Jish, for making your kind and thoughtful idea a reality. To those who criticize Guy Slane for taking legal action, consider. The suit is brought against people who have allegedly wronged him. The iPod and gift certificates were given to him by other people. People who like him, were entertained by him, empathize with him, etc. The gifts are in compensation for his injuries. They're presumably not from the same people. Saying that he should throw out his case because we bought him an iPod is like saying the victim should forget about a mugging because a friend bought them an ice cream afterwards. That said, I have no idea about the merits of his case, which could be completely frivolous. And ultimately, the case would be settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. And after this, Ghislaine would remain quiet and gradually fade away as memes do. He would not break his silence until May of 2013 when he accepted an interview with Jonathan Trudell for L'Actualité magazine and its sister publication Maclean's. In the interview, he reveals that he was inspired to finally come forward with his story after a wave of high-profile suicides related to cyberbullying. It was a very dark period, he said. No matter how hard I tried to ignore people telling me to commit suicide, I couldn't help but feel worthless, like my life wasn't worth living. Reza said he hopes talking about his experience will help others to deal with cyberbullying and urged other victims to overcome their shame and seek help. You'll survive, you'll get through it, he said, and you're not alone. You are surrounded by people who love you. So what became of the Star Wars kid anyway? Where is he now? Although the video caused an interruption in his education, he was able to return to high school for his senior year and finish it out. After high school, he went to McGill University where he received a law degree. And in October 2009, he became the president of an organization called Patrimoine Travailleurs. This organization that he became the president of that I don't want to attempt to pronounce again is primarily concerned with the preservation of the history and culture of his hometown. In particular, he's pointed to events in the past of the town such as the destruction of the city hall and other historic buildings in order to make way for projects such as parking lots. He also mentioned plans to create publications that would give the community access to information that was previously tucked away in private. And that's the story of Ghislaine Reza, the Star Wars kid. He was ultimately the guinea pig for what would become the internet's favorite pastime, completely destroying strangers for no real reason. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of a man who had had enough.
You suck!
An artistic man.
I'm trained classically,
An educated man.
and I'm an NYU film school graduate. Sucker!
But no matter how educated you may be, everyone has their breaking point. And let me tell you, some of these street performers in New York City are annoying as shit. I mean, once in a while you'll come across one that's actually pretty good. Most of the time you can just ignore them, but sometimes you can't ignore them. When you can't ignore them, they're annoying as shit. You're sitting in the subway, the door's closed, then all of a sudden you hear, does anybody know what time it is? As great as it would feel to pull a Jason Takes Manhattan and just kick that boombox in the air. You gotta pick your battles. At least that's how most of us approach it, but not this guy. On this episode of Tales from the Internet, the angry man who yelled at a trumpet. On October 14th of 2013, somebody named Bill Mack uploaded a video to YouTube entitled Trumpet Fight. Trumpet Fight is a video of a short, balding man, who many people at the time actually thought was a woman, adorned in the official uniform of a Midtown Manhattan lunch break while confronting a man playing the trumpet on the sidewalk. This guy was really upset that the trumpet player was disturbing the silence. You know, the silence of the middle of New York City. This video is so outrageous and is filled with so many quotable lines that I wind up watching it several times every single year, and each time it still leaves me in tears. And I'm not gonna sit and watch the whole 3-minute video with you, but what I am gonna do is show you the highlights.
You suck! You suck! Get out! Get out! Get the fuck out! Get out! Anybody know who you are? This is one of the most important places in all of North America. Who are you? Who are you?
Who are you?
See, I had 200,000 people with Bill Graham. In 1975, I walked Bob Dylan up on stage. Who the fuck are you? I knew the Grateful Dead from 1966. Who the fuck are you?
That's this guy's claim to fame. We don't know personal artistic achievements of his own, just who he knows. He knew the Grateful Dead. Alright, if there's anyone from the Grateful Dead watching this, do you know this guy? Let me know. He walked Bob Dylan to the stage. Imagine now the kind of person who they derive some sense of having clout from being side stage at Warped Tour. And now imagine if 40 years later, one of those people were still rubbing it in people's faces that they were side stage at Warped Tour. Essentially what this guy is the 70s version of an Instagram thought.
You're no artist. An artist respects the silence that serves as the foundation of creativity.
An artist respects the silence that serves the foundation of creativity. That's probably my favorite line in this entire video. Because amidst all the, you suck, you know, honest. I love it because all of a sudden, with saying all that, just yelling at a dude, he comes out with this articulate sounding line, opining upon the nature of creativity that he's probably had stored away in his head, waiting to use for months and months and months, and he's finally getting his chance. That comes out all of a sudden, but what drives me up the wall about it too, every single time this video gets posted, you can expect to see some amount of comments from people. Probably the kinds of people who follow stupid Instagram accounts with motivational quotes and whatnot. They see the video and hear that line and they're like, wow, man, it's actually so deep, man, whoa. The kinds of dopes that are dazzled by nice sounding flowery language that in reality doesn't mean all that much. An artist respects the silence that serves the foundation of creativity. It might sound clever, but if you think about it, a person's status as an artist really has no bearing on what their opinions about silence are. And whether or not silence serves as the foundation for creativity is debatable at best. I mean, me personally, I do most of my writing to the sounds of lo-fi hip-hop radio, beats to relax and study to.
You nothing! You are nothing! And you will never be anything. Never! How dare you? How dare you? You miserable, mediocre nothing! Shame on you.
And this is the part of the video where it almost gets a little bit dark, a little bit sad. It's kind of like he's talking to the trumpet player, but it almost sounds like an internal monologue, and he's lamenting all the failures he's had in his life and trying to push it off on some other dude. But I don't know, I'm not here to do armchair psychiatry.
I'm trained classically, I'm trained contemporaneously, and you suck.
Go away.
So this video winds up going super viral, having several million views across a number of different re-uploads of the original. It's getting all kinds of major blog coverage, they make fun of it on Opie Anthony, and I instantly fell in love with this video, and I needed to know more about this guy. And judging by the Facebook post he left shortly after this video went viral, a lot of other people had the same idea. Please note, there have not been nor will there ever be any comments from me to dignify any or all of the insane, outrageous responses sent about a very minor about a very minor situation in passing that is blown completely out of proportion. It is also phenomenal that people would presume to hack in and send replies in my name. All of you who do nothing more, or better, than to serve the illusion will receive exactly what you deserve. Douglas Levison. But in addition to this post, his Facebook also revealed another detail. Apparently, he ran a company known as Flower Power Creative. What kind of company is Flower Power Creative? According to a cursory look at their website, they have their hands in many pots. FlowerPowerCreative.com is a community dedicated to motivating a more compassionate society. Through our events, books, media interviews, and website, we hope to inspire action and dialogue in politics, the environment, women's rights, animal rights, technology, music, and fine arts. Please visit us often for the energy and focus to power the momentum of solutions in these areas of... Wait, he definitely wrote that section himself. Please visit us for often. Please visit us often for the energy and focus to power the momentum of solution. But let me try that again. Please visit us often for the. You can't do it now. And you can see all the various sections of Flower Power Creative: politics, music and fine arts, women's rights, environment, techniques, animal rights, and you go to any of these sections and you get a number of blog posts about said topic. There's also a survey of which group best expresses the 60s wave, the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, and as you can see, the Beatles narrowly edged out the Rolling Stones with a total votes of 83, which actually, now that I think about it, Douglas Levison over here actually got more votes on his Beatles Rolling Stones poll than Maddox did on his last podcast. They also have some testimonials from Satisfied. I'm not really sure what they do exactly. But whatever it is that they do, they got a testimonial from Patty Boyd, who said, "I support the creative vision of Flower Power Creative in World, Artists for Peace, and..." Oh, you can click on testimonials to see all the testimonials that Flower Power Creative has. And it's just the one from Patty Boyd. And the end was its future projects. "I support the creative vision of Flower Power Creative in World Artists for Peace and its future projects. I look forward to great progress in the collaboration, Patty Boyd." They also have Barnes & Noble and Amazon accounts linked up to a book. Danielle the Beer. Oh, apparently they gave an introduction for this book. Introduction by Douglas Levinson, Power Flat. I'll put a link to the book in the description in case you're curious. The real winning section of flowerpowercreative.com is the gallery, in which we have all the various sections they have represented in the gallery. Here's the women's rights photos. This is what women's rights looks like, all photographed by Douglas Levinson. I like how this is the women's rights photos section, but in this picture, the woman in the picture is completely out of focus, and there's like some dude sharp as fuck in the background, just chilling like, yeah. And he also has sections for everything else. The music at 5 dots, environment photos, some pictures of trees, more trees, another tree. Another tree. This is the environment. Tell me this gallery is literally nothing. Oh, there's a wind. I don't know. I don't know. The windmill is the environment. Paulo. Oh wait, they got environment part 2. Maybe I hope that's like something that's not true. Oh, it's the sky. Oh, chemtrails. Tell me, technology photos, and it's like I guess a lamp is technology. You got a car, a train, technology, a building, the same build. What the hell is this technology? What is that? Is this like a monolith made out of stone? Technology is that? Finally, the best one. Politics. Let's take a look at the politics pictures. There's an out of focus. Can you... Alright, so it's nighttime in Washington, D.C., and you've got this goblin wandering around, creeping outside the White House, taking pictures from behind the bushes. Can you imagine? Like, this could have turned out way worse than it did. What is that? Why did he take all these at night? So ultimately, Douglas's website gave us a better idea about the man behind the Trumpet Fight. However, the Trumpet Fight itself was still shrouded in mystery. Thankfully, though, Douglas broke his promise to never speak about this again about a month later. On December 16th, he appeared on the Improv for Humans podcast to discuss the Trumpet Fight.
Franklin Roosevelt was my grandmother's neighbor up in Beacon and was little Franklin, so that's family. Kennedy I met when I was 6, JFK, so that's
really?
Okay.
And when he's not name dropping, he goes ahead and tells us some information about where this all went down.
And he was in front of what's called the Museum of the Holocaust, which is a little bit as you start walking north back out at the bottom of the park.
And knowing that this took place outside of the Holocaust Museum, you might see why a person would flip out over this. They might think he's being disrespectful by playing the trumpet. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves, because later on he goes on to clarify that the Holocaust Museum really wasn't why he was mad.
It's not in the recording, but before the recording starts, did you ever say, this is the Holocaust Museum that you're playing outside of? Did you ever inform him of that fact?
I gotta tell you, in all innocence, it wasn't any one specific element of this taking place. It was summative in that it was where it was happening, of course, in that particular nice spot, but it's the whole neighborhood here, of which the museum is just another expression. The park is an expression.
But perhaps the most important part of this interview is when Douglas goes on to explain that famous line and where it came from.
At some point you say something to the effect of silence is the foundation of all creativity. Is that your own quote,
exactly.
Or are you quoting somebody?
No, I've been practicing TM. I was inspired
Transcendental
by the Beatles,
meditation.
You suck! Who are you? I had 200,000 people.
I mean, the old basic quote is that silence is golden. And when you've been experiencing this level of silence and the pure value of silence into the creative mode, this is part of how, like, the whole system of knowledge and experience work. But that was my quote.
So where is Douglas Levison these days? Although he's been mostly quiet on social media, he did appear in a movie a couple years ago, as himself, yelling at Ariel Pinkford playing music in the street.
What is this? You think that you guys are creating art? You think that you're musicians? You know how to play and sing? It's a disgrace. It's a perversion of the creative process and a violation of the silence of what it is to create.
Have you ever heard Bob Dylan?
It's a bunch of noise.
So although he wound up resisting at first, it appears that Douglas Levison wound up embracing the fact that he will forever be known as the Angry Trumpet Man. And that's the story of what's probably my favorite viral video of all time. The leather 8-ball jacket, designed in 1990 by Michael Hoban, was one of the most iconic fashion pieces of the early 90s. At the time, it was popular in general to wear jackets with heavy contrasting colors, but there was always something about the 8-ball design that made it stand just a cut above the rest. But as the 90s progressed, changing tastes and cheap knockoffs made the jacket go out of style. It went from being a highly coveted status symbol to something you'd be mocked for wearing.
Check it out. Hey, Paul. You got a question? You ask the 8-ball.
You're gonna wear this all the time?
All signs point to yes.
The 8-ball jacket was dead. But then in 2014, the 8-ball jacket had a bit of a moment, a little bit of a resurgence. Not because of any kind of ironic celebrity fashion statement, but rather because of a viral video. A guy on the New York City subway who had just had enough.
Fucking dirty, bitch!
Oh, so for today's video, let's talk about the legend of 8-ball jacket guy. Also, be sure to check out my new video on Storyfire about the infamous website dolphinsex.org. The link will be in the pinned comment. The legend of 8-ball jacket guy begins on November 8th of 2014 when a video was uploaded to YouTube entitled "Man Smacks the Soul Out of Girl on the New York Subway." Let's take a look at the footage.
Nigga, like, what the fuck is you talking about? Like, nigga,
hey.
talk about fucking, I'm gonna get you fucked up. What do you mean? Like, what the fuck is you talking about? Stay over there.
Like most of these kinds of videos, we have absolutely no idea what actually happened before it began.
Speaking for you, you got a bum-ass 8-ball jacket that came out in 1990. Bro,
damn!
You got a fucking big-ass fur hat. Oh, King That's Nike boots. That's this long. Just get your money up. Simple. Like, I'm done.
She's making fun of his fit, but at this point they're both kind of laughing, so this seems like it can go any way.
I'm just done. Get your money up. Alright? Alright? You want out my shoes? I got one that Steve Madden for. Alright?
Watch out, she's got Steve Madden, guys.
Nobody wants Steve Madden no more.
And alright, I know there's gonna be some girl watching this that's like, hey, what's wrong with Steve Madden? And I'm sure, I've never worn Steve Madden booties before, but I'm sure they're perfectly fine shoes. But how are you gonna shit on this guy's jacket, tell him to get his money up, and then you're flexing some fucking Steve Madden like this is high fashion luxury shit? Like, I'm not saying that you gotta spend a lot of money on shoes, but if she's the one that made it about money. Either way, keep those Steve Madden shoes in the back of your head because they're gonna be important later. And at this point though, they're still smiling. This could go in any direction. Oh, never mind. Fuck is you talking about?
You petty as hell. You can't even afford this now. Nobody's watching you. What are you doing that for?
Oh, and again, you see, this is the attitude you develop in life when you've been trained through your experiences to expect that there will never be physical consequences for your actions.
So when you get mad?
You sound stupid.
Fucking dirty, bitch.
That right there is $45 of Steve Madden right upside the fucking head. Let's see what happens next.
Oh! Oh, shit!
Do you guys hear that sound? I think Walter would be proud.
Look at this.
Well, he doesn't stop there. Then he takes out the whole squad. This one's getting choked out, someone's yelling World Star, this guy's screaming. Eventually, people manage to stop the fight and calm down both sides. Immediately after this altercation, 8-Ball Jacket Guy and the woman who hit him with a shoe were arrested. 8-Ball Jacket Guy had a sizable cut behind the ear that he was first taken to the hospital to examine. After the hospital released him, he would spend the next 4 days in jail. And while he sat behind bars, the video began to get millions of views. And conversations started to break out all over social media. Was he justified in hitting her that hard? Or was he a fragile man who just couldn't keep his hands to himself? Although there was a contingent that thought you should never ever hit a woman even when you're defending yourself from her luxurious Steve Madden shoes, by and large people were on his side. And people began to speak of him as sort of a folk hero. Even now the name 8-Ball Jacket Guy carries a bit of weight. People who know the story probably even saw my thumbnail and thought, hell yeah, 8-Ball Jacket Guy, that guy's the fucking man. 8-Ball Jacket Guy was identified as Jorge Pena, a Dominican man who came to the US in pursuit of a baseball career. And in the 2010 season, he was the minor league pitcher for the Oakland Athletics. And ultimately, Jorge was released from jail, and his lawyer believed that it was this footage that saved him.
I think if there wasn't a video in this case, Mr. Pena would have went to court for probably a year before something substantial happened, whether that was a dismissal or a trial.
And I'm inclined to agree. I mean, look at the size of this guy.
How much does that guy weigh?
If we didn't have that footage, I think it's really safe to say that nobody would have believed him. His life would have just been ruined. And that's one of the reasons why when I see a video like this go viral, I can't stand the comments that are like, oh, how could you just sit there and record this thing? Why didn't you go do something about it? Like, first off, all these fucking keyboard warriors in the Facebook comments probably wouldn't have done shit. And if they did, half the time the person that goes in and tries to play hero winds up getting their ass beat the worst. And most importantly, in situations like this, it's this kind of footage that winds up helping to clear the names of innocent people. But all that being said, 8-Ball Jacket Guy himself might not have agreed with all the people who were holding him up as some kind of a hero. In fact, he was deeply ashamed of the situation.
I cannot go on the train anymore. I love my jacket. I cannot wear this jacket anymore. It makes me feel bad. You understand how the girls are gonna look me on the street? Like, yeah, this is the man who has slapped the girl.
And things weren't over for 8-Ball Jacket Guy's attacker. After this altercation, the woman with the shoe identified as Danae Howard was brought up on felony assault charges. And on May 21st of 2015, she would accept a plea bargain, copping to 2nd and 3rd degree assault with a Steve Madden booty. Her penalty? If she completes 1 year of therapy, 3 days of community service, and stays out of trouble for a year, she'll be allowed to replead to a misdemeanor, prosecutor said. Some people were pissed off about that, thought it was too light of a sentence. Me personally, I don't think we should be locking people up and throwing away the key for every altercation. And as for the 8-Ball Jacket itself, it wound up having a bit of a renewed interest after this whole incident. Michael Hoven, the creator of the jacket, praised Jorge and said that he should be proud to wear his jacket. Patrick Warburton, who played Putty on Seinfeld and famously had an episode where he was mocked for his 8-Ball jacket, said that he regretted not buying it from Wardrobe when he had the chance. People began to dig them up at thrift stores, while some companies decided to make their own knockoffs once again. It's a rare case of memes influencing fashion, however subtly and briefly, and thinking about it now that I'm making this video, I kinda wanna get one. People like to talk about how much they hate reality TV, but honestly, I think reality TV got kind of a bad rap. Like, they weren't my favorite thing in the whole world, but they were enjoyable enough for what they were. What I found much more obnoxious than reality TV itself is all these big-brained intellectuals who are like, why come they call it reality TV because it's not reality? I don't know, maybe it's because nobody feels like sitting around watching a show where you stare at a screen all day long and maybe chuckle once every 20 minutes. Like, these shows weren't trying to be Citizen Kane, they were basically wrestling for soccer moms. But you know, I watch them too sometimes, despite not being a soccer mom. And among the best were two virtually indistinguishable shows, Trading Spouses and Wife Swap. The show where you trade your wife with a family whose values are completely incompatible with yours and see what happens. And in 2005, Trading Spouses introduced us to one of reality TV's most iconic figures.
She's not a Christian!
One of the most popular memes of that time.
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly!
For this episode of Tales from the Internet, let's take a look at Marguerite Perrin, the God Warrior. By the mid-2000s, reality TV had been around for a while and had more or less completely taken over primetime television. It was clear that the genre wasn't going anywhere. Everywhere you looked, there was another Joe Millionaire, Hell's Kitchen, 9911, and of course, Trading Spouses. Trading Spouses had a very successful first season, and they were promising to start season 2 off with a bang. For the weeks leading up to November of 2005, we'd see promos showing off the craziest rant you've ever seen on TV.
Get the hell out of my house, in Jesus' name I pray!
A rant that would haunt the internet for years to come.
She's not a Christian!
And these promos were our first glimpse of Marguerite Perrin, the God Warrior. The first installment of the 2-part season premiere airs on November 2nd of 2005. It begins by showing the Perrins, a family of devout conservative Christians led by the domineering, but generally affable matriarch, Marguerite. She would be going to live with the Flisher family, a very hippie, new agey, spiritual family. In other words, the perfect contrast to what Marguerite was used to. And at first, things seemed like they were going pretty well.
I was praying for Mary, Jesus, and Joseph to help me. And you look like Jesus, so I'm comfortable.
But then, accompanied by creepy music, she takes in all of the horrible sights. The mandalas, the pentagram, the gorgiles. Meanwhile, while staying with the Perrin family, Jean tries to avoid any contentious religious topics. This comes apart as soon as she's interrogated by Marguerite's friends.
You're not a Christian, in other words.
No, I believe in God, but I'm in a spiritual...
Do you believe in God, or do you believe in a higher power?
Meanwhile, Marguerite's discomfort grows as she's made to participate in what she believes to be some kind of ungodly ritual. And the whole thing comes apart as soon as she's introduced to a psychic.
Tristan is a psychic.
Psychics!
And note that before every single commercial break, we're treated to bits and pieces of the God Warrior rant. These reality TV producers really knew how to string people along. So the next episode finally comes along, Marguerite and Jean meet each other.
Please, put God in your heart. I need to figure things out and talk to Chris. There's a lot of things that happened that I'm angry about.
Note that the Flishers have since gotten divorced. And then finally, we're treated to it. The meltdown that spawned 1,000 memes, such as...
She's not a Christian!
And...
Dalek-sided stuff!
And...
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly!
And...
I give it up to God! I'm a God warrior! I am a spiritual warrior because I'm the warrior. I'm the one that's the warrior. Why can't you be the warrior?
Punctuated by her ripping up the check, and then deciding to keep the money after all for gastric bypass surgery. These episodes would be the highest rated episodes in the history of the show. Memes, remixes, and clips wound up everywhere online, and at some point it completely took over YTMND.
God warrior! God warrior! Christian! Gargoyle! Psychics! I'm a God warrior!
But, as is often the case with these things, some people couldn't leave it at just memes. People found out where the Perrins live and started to show up at their house, causing them to have to call the police several times. They also found out their phone number and started prank calling them, mostly by doing impressions of Marguerite. Although I wasn't able to find any recordings of these calls, one report says that she responded to at least one of them by telling her side of the story. She claimed that the show was edited in such a way to make it look way worse than it was. And in general, she said that she mostly got along with the Flisher family. Of course, all the nice moments didn't make the final cut because it didn't suit the narrative. In an interview with the LA Times, Marguerite described what it was like to watch the episode once it finally aired. When my family watched the show this last week, instead of seeing the humor that everyone else saw in All the Psycho Mom, they cried. I didn't cry at my party, but I cried when I got in my bed because it was very sad to me to see me so upset. It was very sad for the world not to see Marguerite Perrin happy because my friends and family know me like that. And although obviously the big God Warrior rant did happen, and there were times at the Fleischer's home where she was very obviously unhappy and uncomfortable, it is clear that the producers ramped up certain aspects of the shoot for the sake of the narrative, as is the case in much of reality TV. For instance, there's the one scene where Marguerite is merely standing on the porch looking around, but they intercut it with creepy music of all the imagery, the Gorgiles, dark-sided stuff. Or the part where they show her tossing and turning in bed and they're showing some kind of nightmare she might be having. And while there were a few nice moments that did make the final cut, it's likely that there are many more that we just didn't see. In any case, she did eventually lean into the meme. At some point, a company named TalkingBobbleheads.com sold a bobblehead of Marguerite on eBay. Marguerite had seen the listing and loved the toy so much that she took a picture with the listing, autographed it, and mailed it to its creator. She would later be gifted this bobblehead by Jay Leno when she appeared on The Tonight Show. She would also launch the official God Warrior website, which promoted her music. Yes, Marguerite Perrin made 2 music CDs, one of them being her single, Marguerite, Why Can't You Be Sweet?
Marguerite, why can't you be sweet with the gap in your teeth?
You're not a Christian!
Marguerite.
And this song was a part of her full-length album, Sit Down Comedy. I was not able to find the tracks on Sit Down Comedy anywhere except for MySpace, but apparently this album contained 4 musical tracks and 3 spoken word storytelling tracks. And with Marguerite getting Trading Spouses' all-time highest ratings and her maintaining some degree of her popularity, the producers of Trading Spouses thought that maybe they should bring her in for the 3rd season again. As one of the producers put it, "We felt Marguerite was a very intolerant person," the producer said. Now, she says she's become more tolerant and patient. Let's test that. So for this episode, they decided to ramp up the racial tensions by placing Marguerite in the home of black activists.
Okay.
Right?
We can continue this another time.
You don't want to have this conversation no more?
I just don't want to have it constantly.
I can't help it. I'm black constantly.
Things got comically petty at times.
Why would I introduce somebody I consider my enemy to somebody I consider my friend?
I just want butter for...
Do you want me to go get you butter?
We got butter. Don't let this woman convince you we ain't got butter. She just want me to give her the butter. She trying to make a scene. I ain't going for her.
Despite this being a super tense, sensational episode, it didn't do the same kind of ratings that the first episode did. Nor did it produce anything close to the original episode's memorable moments. A valiant effort, but basically forgotten to time. And not that long after the episode aired, the Perrins would be in the news once again. This time due to unfortunate circumstances. On September 27th of 2007, Ashley Perrin, Marguerite's daughter, was involved in a car accident. She passed away at the scene, leaving behind her 8-year-old daughter. Marguerite added a tribute to Ashley on her MySpace page, and on her website, she thanked people for their support. And this was the last that people heard from Marguerite for a very long time. That is, until June of 2019, when she made a very unexpected appearance at World Pride in New York City, cementing her status as an icon of the gay community.
The gay community.
Which I guess makes some kind of sense because as far as I can tell, the gays love reality TV. In an interview with Esquire, Marguerite spoke about how her daughter's passing put her in touch with the gay community. I have to tell you, I was in my bedroom. I was not getting out of bed for the longest time, she says. After her daughter's death, Perrin remembers that even some of her closest friends didn't know how to bring it up to her, so they just didn't. In their stead, the gay community stepped in. Co-opting her as an online viral icon, gay men reached out with condolences and notes and flowers. The gay community weren't scared to talk about me losing Ashley and saying I'm sorry to hear about that, she remembers. I was pretending like I was happy and I was okay. They would not leave me alone. You couldn't help but talk to them and be okay with them. The people that write those little memes do those little things. I love that. That's what got me out of bed after Ashley's death. And this past summer in New York, the gay community wouldn't leave her alone again. as Perrin exited a church in New York City. Spotting the group across the street, she remembers thinking, "You can tell when somebody knows who you are. Just like this light goes off in their face." Not particularly interested in chatting with anyone, Perrin didn't go to them, but they came to her. The group quickly introduced themselves, saying, "We wanted to tell you we are so happy to see you in New York, and we want to tell you we're very sorry to hear about your daughter Ashley." 12 years after the fact, they still remember, so Perrin asked for a hug. It's the people who turned her into a meme who also helped her heal. In the interview, she also mentioned that she's currently working on a new TV show. In this TV show, she's going to be placed in a variety of different uncomfortable cultural situations. On January 3rd, 2011, Doral Chenoweth of the Columbus Dispatch introduced the internet to this guy.
And don't forget, tomorrow morning is your chance to win a pair of tickets to see this man live in concert.
Ted Williams, the man with the golden voice. You probably remember Ted, but you might not know his story. Find it out on this episode of Tales from the Internet. Doral Chenoweth worked as the videographer for the Columbus Dispatch, a newspaper based out of Columbus, Ohio. At some point, he began to notice an interesting man at a highway off-ramp during his commute.
I'm gonna make you work for your dollar. Say something with that great radio voice.
When you're listening to nothing but the best of oldies, you're listening to Magic 98.9. Thank you so much. God bless you.
And that golden radio voice might have sounded familiar to some people from the Columbus, Ohio area.
This is WVKO AM, concluding another day of broadcasting. WVKO AM is owned and operated by the Skyway Broadcasting Corporation, with studios and transmitter at 4401 Carriage Hill Lane.
Ted Williams, the man with the golden voice, had been the late-night DJ for WVKO AM in Columbus, Ohio for over a decade. This role was the culmination of a career path that he had been on since he was 14 years old.
Well, when I was 14 years old, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. When I was 14, I kind of listened to one of our area radio announcers. And I went as a field trip to go meet the guy. I can't be an actor, I can't be an on-air personality, but the voice just became something of a development over years, and I went to school for it.
But in the mid-80s, Ted had begun to struggle with drugs and alcohol. These struggles snowballed, leading up to a point in 1994 when he lost his job and he was evicted from his home, leading to a period of about 20 years of living on and off the streets. And throughout this period, Ted was arrested several times for various charges such as theft, possession of drugs, and public solicitation. By the time of Ted's encounter with Doral Chenoweth, however, he claimed to have been clean for 2 years. The video goes super viral, and you have tons of people clamoring for someone to get this guy off the streets and give him a job. And it's actually a little funny what the story reveals about our attitudes towards the homeless. Everyone sees this guy and they're like, wait a minute, you got a nice voice, you don't belong on the streets. Homelessness is for people with no talent.
And I've earned my right to say it!
But you know, ultimately that's all just about people meaning well and wanting to feel good about this, and the job offers did come in. He's making a ton of talk show appearances, he's getting actual voiceover jobs.
Kraft home-style macaroni and cheese.
The Cleveland Cavaliers step in and offer to give him a home and a long-term role, and he also gets his own reality show called Second Chances at Life. And a little over a week after his video goes viral, Ted's flown into LA to do appearances on Entertainment Tonight and Dr. Phil. And it was at that point that it became clear that things weren't so clean-cut as they seemed. A trip to Hollywood for appearances on Dr. Phil and Entertainment Tonight got off to a rough start for overnight internet sensation Williams. A disturbance report was made after Williams and his daughter got into a heated argument Monday at the Renaissance Hollywood Hotel and Spa. It was minor. Both parties were angry, but there were no signs of visible abuse, Los Angeles police officer Catherine Massey said Tuesday. She said the two were brought in, calmed down, talked to, and released, and she did not know the nature of the argument. Ted Williams told ET in a Tuesday night show that it was a family gathering that got out of control. I wanted to bring it to a close just by saying, shut the hell up and let me talk to your mother. When that was said out of my mouth, my daughter exploded, just erupted into this jump up in my face type of thing, Fists started flying, none of which were mine, but it could have escalated to the point where it could have gotten really ugly. So in the process of doing that, I got scratched on my face, he told E.T. Following this incident, Dr. Phil pressed Ted about his claims that he had been sober for 2 years.
I respect you enough to be straight with you. I'm not going to play games with you. I'm going to be straight with you. You've been drinking, and you haven't been honest about that. And I get that. I know that it's hard for you. That's why you do need to go to rehab.
And after Dr. Phil got Ted to admit that he hadn't really been sober for 2 years, he convinced him to check into a rehab facility. Ted left rehab 2 weeks later. I love Dr. Phil. I don't want to bash him in any way, said Williams. I walked out of treatment because it was a little scripted, I felt. There was no anonymity. I want him to know that his cares and his concerns will not be in vain. I am going to try and truly get back into the swing of things. But despite Ted's stated determination to get things back on the right path, this is where things started to take a turn for the worse. By May of that year, Ted had lost his offer from the Cleveland Cavaliers. The filming of his reality show was also put on hold due to how much emotional stress it was causing him at the time. And it was at that point that he once again checked into rehab, the very same rehab facility that Dr. Phil had set him up with. This time, however, rehab was more successful, and after a 90-day program, he made his return to the Dr. Phil show.
Today on Dr. Phil, from homeless to Hollywood to rehab. Now, after 90 days in treatment,
I never gave up on you along the way.
Ted Williams returns for an exclusive interview.
Ted was finally 3 months sober, and this was the point where everything really started to come back together. Even after his viral fame had started to fizzle out, he was still getting somewhat consistent work, and it looked like he was able to maintain a healthy lifestyle. But there is one man who almost put an abrupt end to Ted's second chance at life. You see, even though the majority of people who reached out to Ted really just wanted what was best for him, to give him opportunities so he can get back on the right path in life, these kinds of situations always seem to bring out the rats, especially when there's money on the table. And in this case, the rat was a concert promoter named Alfred Battle. Shortly after Ted went viral, Alfred Battle reached out to him and became his manager. Alfred Battle worked with Ted throughout his early media appearances and some of his early voiceover gigs. And at some point, when Ted was in need of a bit more money, Alfred came to him with a very lucrative offer. This offer was extremely vague, but Ted could have used that money. Basically, Alfred told him that he could come with him to Ethiopia, make $10,000, and be treated like a king. Thankfully for Ted, at the time this happened, Battle was no longer his manager, and his current manager advised him against taking the offer. And shortly after, Alfred Battle was in the news. Columbus concert promoter charged with having 18 pounds of heroin at New Jersey airport. Yep. Alfred Battle got arrested with $512,000 worth of heroin concealed at the fake bottom of a bag. It's extremely likely that the reason why Alfred Battle approached Ted Williams with the Ethiopia deal is because he was intended to be the fall guy. And Ted Williams was very aware of this fact. He could have planted some drugs on me, or maybe he would have used me as the fall guy or something, he said. He's in jail. He'll probably be there until he dies. I feel so thankful that isn't me. They would have thrown away the key, I'd be done for. Even if I had no idea what he was planning, even if I was just walking next to him, they would have locked me up for life, said Williams. Who's going to believe that a former crackhead wasn't in on that deal, he asked. So where is Ted now? Even though it's been a long and complicated road, it seems that for the most part, Ted has remained sober and has been getting pretty consistent work. He also wrote a book about his experience, which I'll link in the bio. In 2015, he attempted to revive his reality show through crowdfunding, although it looks like it fell short of its goal. However, he did get his own show on WVKO AM, which you might remember is the very same radio station he worked on so many years ago.
Guess who's back? Guess who's back?
Guess who's back?
Guess who's back?
Ted Williams with you. On the radio, that is. It's me, the man with the golden voice.
And in continuing with the theme of things coming full circle for him, he now volunteers a lot of his time helping the homeless. In particular, he volunteers at the same shelter that helped him when he was on the streets. So at 60 years old, it looks like things are going pretty well for the man with the golden voice. In 2001, fresh off of his divorce from Elizabeth Daly, who you might know as the voice of Tommy Pickles, Buttercup from the Powerpuff Girls, and Rudy Tabooti, an internet gambling entrepreneur named Rick Salomon found himself a new main squeeze, a young, wealthy socialite named Paris Hilton, of the famous Hilton Hotel family. As Paris and Rick traveled the world together, Rick had taken to filming absolutely everything they did.
You're like obsessed, you always film me.
But it was one of Rick's little vlogs that would become more famous than all the others. A video that would help elevate Paris Hilton for being some rich girl who is known mostly just to a tabloid gossip-obsessed niche to becoming a household name, one of the most famous women in the world. And the truth about this video is actually a lot different from what you've been led to believe all these years. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of one night in Paris. I remember it so clearly. It was November of 2001. I was sitting on a metal folding chair in an acting class. We're waiting for the teacher to show up, and all of a sudden one of the other students goes up to me and he's like, "Hey, did you see the Paris Hilton sex tape?" To which I respond, "Who?" At this point in time, I had absolutely no idea who Paris Hilton was. And I was far from being alone in that regard. I mean, unless you were very, very into celebrity gossip at that time, you didn't know her yet. And you might be surprised to find out that no, I was not very, very into celebrity gossip. But still, later that day I go home, I open up LimeWire and immediately get that video. Sure, I didn't know who Paris Hilton was, but I knew that she was out there naked on the internet, so I had to go and, store up in the Pokédex. Gotta catch them all. And this was a strange video, not really what I was expecting. All in night vision with Paris Hilton looking like a cryptid of some sort. I was expecting something more like that infamous Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee video, which apparently is getting a Hulu series made about it now. But what I got instead was Paranormal Activity. And in a way, this kind of was like seeing some kind of mythical beast of legend. You see, earlier that year, rumors that such a tape existed had already been circulating. In fact, these rumors had grown to the extent that people were saying that there were as many as 10 Paris Hilton sex tapes that existed, including another one where she hooks up with playmate Nicole Marie Lenz and is recorded by MTV's Simon Rex. Throughout the years, several of these tapes were allegedly brought to porn distributors in an attempt to sell them, and others were rumored to simply being circulating around the Hollywood circles. Because supposedly that was just what these people did. They would trade each other's sex tapes so everyone could get jealous of their hot bodies. And at the time, these were rumors that Paris Hilton outright denied. In an article published on August 8th of 2003, remember that date, amidst all the rumors, Paris had spoken to New York Magazine. Specifically, she spoke of the notorious sex tape with her ex-boyfriend, Rick Salomon. According to the article, he had been going around Hollywood telling people that this tape existed. Hilton insists there's no video, at least that she knows of. He's a complete liar and scumbag, she said last week in Ibiza, where she was vacationing with, of all people, Girls Gone Wild producer Joe Francis. He is a very sick man. People love to talk shit because they're jealous. I don't care. Whatever. Ironically, it turned out that Girls Gone Wild was one of the companies approached to distribute this tape. An anonymous donor had tried to get them to purchase it for $1 million. But Girls Gone Wild turned it down as they could not verify who actually owned the rights to it. But not all businesses are as scrupulous as Girls Gone Wild.
Show us where babies feed.
Enter a pornographer named Kevin Blatt. A man who had referred to himself as the P.T. Barnum of Pussy. He began to make a name for himself after a stunt where he met the porn star Houston and set up a live stream of her labioplasty operation. For those not in the know, a labioplasty is a surgical procedure in which the labia are made smaller for aesthetic purposes. I like how I did this motion like I was slicing a potato. The event itself was a failure. Although Houston did manage to sell her removed labia bits online for $4,500. In any case though, Blatt's stunt had succeeded in getting him attention. And after an appearance on the Howard Stern show, Blatt was approached by two men. a phone sex baron named Ian Eisenberg, and a man named Roger Vidocq who owned a porn company named Marvad. These men showed Blatt the infamous night vision clip, a clip that now had its home on Vidocq's website, sexbrat.com, with the promise that they had the entire full-length tape and were just waiting to reveal it all to the world. The idea was that they could use Blatt's connection to Howard Stern to create a bidding war for the tape, and they wound up working out a deal. Blatt would call into the Howard Stern show, and every time he mentioned sexbrat.com, he would get $1,000. Every time Howard mentioned it, he would get $2,000. After this arrangement is made, Blatt gets on the phone with Baba Booey and sets up his appearance. In the time between this deal being made and the appearance actually happening, a lot changed. Shit had already hit the fan, the clip was all over file sharing services, and legal threats were flying all over the place. After contacting the website, Paris Hilton managed to get the clip taken off of sexbrat.com, but Kevin Blatt still got paid.
First of all, what is sexbrat.com?
Sexbrat.com.
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 My client, sexbrat.com.
And after this, here comes the cascade of lawsuits. It gets really convoluted, so bear with me here. Paris and her parents believe that Rick himself had recorded it, going on to say that he filmed the video without her consent. Paris had said that she was out of it and didn't know what she was doing. And they also alleged that Paris was underage at the time of filming, a claim that was patently false since Paris was 19 in 2001 when it was shot. So Rick responded by suing the Hiltons for defamation. He would also sue Roger Vidocq's company Marvad for distributing the tape without his permission. And Marvad responded by trying to get him on an interesting technicality. They claimed that because in part of the video Paris Hilton can be seen helping to set up the camera, she actually co-owned the copyright to this video. They claimed that because she was also entitled to the copyright, Rick Salomon's lawsuit was invalid without her being a part of it. Ironically, the argument they made against him would be an argument that he would use to support his case against the Hiltons.
Here she's hanging out, helping me set up the camera. She does participate, so there's no illegal filming going on, and all this was very legal and consensual, over 18 years old, barely, and, you know, you can't hide cameras on people, that's illegal, but this is all, and here she was helping me for a second set up the camera, and now she's about to get a suck down.
Rick would then put the full video up on another website called TrustFundGirls.com, in which Paris Hilton is referred to only as the Trust Fund Girl to avoid outright naming her. Kinda like what the Fire Pro games used to do with wrestlers. After this, Paris Hilton would sue a Florida-based internet company named Katahani Limited. I assume that Katahani had some connection to Trust Fund Girls, but there is literally no information to be found about this company except that they were sued by Paris Hilton. But either way, this case would eventually be thrown out. And then Rick Salomon would drop his case against her. By this time, Rick was distributing the full video through a company named Red Light District Video, under the name One Night in Paris. An agreement was allegedly struck that would pay Paris Hilton $400,000 for this in addition to a percent of sales. However, Paris Hilton maintains to this day that she has never seen a single dime from this video. Oh yeah, and also, this version opens up with a tribute to 9/11. Really touching stuff. But we're still not done with the lawsuits. Marvad would also file a lawsuit of their own. This suit was against another player in this whole mess, a man named Don Thrasher, a good friend of Rick Salomon. Allegedly, Marvad's Roger Vidocq had been contacted by Thrasher regarding the tape. They claimed that they were led to believe that Thrasher had permission to sell this tape, so they bought it from him for $50,000. And after this happened, Thrasher insisted that not only did he have permission to sell this, but he gave Rick Salomon $25,000 from the sale. Salomon, however, claims that Thrasher stole the tape from his apartment and never gave him permission. And here's where it gets even more interesting. You see, there's a contract for this transaction. In this contract between Vidocq and Thrasher, it states that Salomon and Hilton created the video with the intention of it eventually being released to friends and fans. But now that Hilton denied its existence, Salomon wants it out there to prove he's not a liar. And note that this contract was signed on August 26, 2003, 2 weeks after the New York Magazine article where Paris Hilton called Rick Salomon a liar. The contract also insists that Salomon must remain confidential in this agreement, as the knowledge that he approves of its release could jeopardize his then marriage to 90210's Shannon Doherty. Shannon Doherty, Paris Hilton, Tommy Pickles, later on Pamela Anderson, twice. This guy gets around. Personally, I find it really strange that this contract spends so much time going into the underlying reasoning for releasing the tape. I would think that the contract would just be, here are your rights, here are your obligations, here are my rights and my obligations. Sign on the dotted line. But the whole thing is just weirdly detailed and personal. And looking at the strange contract, I see two possibilities. Maybe Thrasher really did steal this tape as Rick Salomon claimed, and then he just added all these details to make the lie seem more believable. Or maybe everything in the contract is true and Rick Salomon really did have Thrasher acting on his behalf. If that's the case, Don Thrasher is an absolute moron for not having another contract between himself and Rick Salomon. He would have been leaving himself with absolutely no way to prove that he was telling the truth. And it would have made Rick Salomon completely free to throw Thrasher under the bus if things went wrong. And things did go wrong. Although the more I read about Don Thrasher, who apparently is now a politician in Kentucky.
We're here to talk about the restraining orders if you want. Let's talk about what she did to Dr. Harrison.
With several accusations against him from his own party, the more I'm inclined to think that maybe he did steal the tape. Now let's circle back to the fact that the contract says that Rick Salomon and Paris Hilton made this tape with the intention of it eventually being seen by friends and fans. I think this idea is something that a lot of people already thought without ever having seen the contract. Because there's no denying that this video was a major catalyst in Paris Hilton becoming the force she would eventually become. A person who managed to basically turn every scandal into a win and make the blueprint for a person who's famous for being famous. Although there was that one rumor that Paris Hilton was secretly a math genius who was in Mensa, partially spurred on by a strange New York Times article that was later corrected, saying that it misquoted a New Yorker article, but it's a rumor that still persists to this day. The sex tape thing was just taking her appeal to the next level, and the timing was all so convenient. It would be on December 2nd, mere weeks after the leak, that her new TV show, The Simple Life, would premiere on Fox. A show where rich party girls Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie go to live on a farm to experience the simple life. Right at a time when reality shows were just starting to completely dominate primetime. In the weeks leading up to the release of the show, Fox had booked a massive promotional tour for it. Regis and Kelly, TRL, Craig Kilborn, Sharon Osbourne, David Letterman. Well, after the leak of the tape, Paris Hilton's family hired a new publicist, Dan Klores, who had previously worked with Michael Jackson, Mike Tyson, and Donald Trump. Dan Klores was the founder of the DKC public relations firm, who described themselves as maximizing return on news. Something that Paris Hilton certainly did succeed in doing. Dan's first order of business? Cancel every single one of these appearances. Classic strategy to bury a scandal, one that we see still on YouTube to this day. Most of the outlets were quiet about it, but David Letterman in particular was not happy. He took to his show to vent about this on several occasions.
So the lovely Paris Hilton was supposed to be on the show tomorrow, and she canceled. And the reason she canceled, she hired a publicist, this no-good, beady-eyed weasel thug putz. Publicist got a hold of her and forced her to cancel her appearance on the show. I hate that. Now this is a huge, huge career mistake for the beautiful Paris Hilton.
Quite a few people questioned the wisdom of Dan Klores' advice, saying that if Paris were to do these interviews now when everybody's talking about her, surely it would just increase the publicity from it even more. But when questioned by the media about this, Klores said that his top priority was to protect Paris. In any case, it was still expected that even without the interviews, the show would still enjoy a bump from this. And sure enough, it was a massive success. Not only did it bring huge ratings in for itself, but it also brought a notable ratings increase for The OC, which aired after it, and That 70s Show, which aired before it. This was a huge win for Fox, which was struggling to compete at the time. But because of the role the video played in this success, a lot of people questioned whether or not Fox or Paris Hilton leaked it on purpose. Both Fox and Paris denied this, and Paris continues to deny it to this day. But a lot of people think they're lying. Especially because after this, people started to see the celebrity sex tape as, in Paris Hilton's own words, a blueprint to become famous. But what do I think? With all the evidence that's available, looking through old articles, videos, interviews, opinions, and posts for hours. My gut feeling is that Paris Hilton is telling the truth. I think it's possible that, as it said in that contract, that maybe back then in 2001 when they made this tape, they had remarked about sharing it with people. But keep in mind that that video was made 2 whole years before the shitstorm. A lot can change in 2 years, especially for a 19-year-old. And in any case, a single scandal can only take you so far. We've seen so many people throughout the years find themselves suddenly in the middle of the big media shitstorm, and then boom, everybody moves on and we never hear from them again. How many reality TV stars throughout the years quickly faded into nothing? Paris, on the other hand, went in the other direction, becoming one of the most famous people on the planet, venturing out not just into other mediums, but several of her own business ventures. And although she's not as popular as she was at her peak, she is in the middle of mounting a comeback. Recently, in September of 2020, she was the subject of a YouTube Originals documentary entitled This Is Paris. A lot of the documentary goes into how Paris Hilton had been playing a character for all these years, and now she was kinda stuck with it. Not that the Mensa math genius thing was true, but she definitely played up the ditzy party girl shtick. And in fact, in past interviews, she has even said that this character she made was directly inspired by Cher from Clueless. And it makes sense. People like to watch this person that they believe is stupid because then it makes them feel good that they think they're better than somebody. The truth is, and I know this is such a cliche thing to say, but reality TV was never as real as it was made out to be. But as someone who grew up as a wrestling fan, I was kind of okay with that. And in the early 2000s, a time when pro wrestling had decided that it wants to keep winking at us and expose the business, the then emerging format of reality TV was insistent on keeping kayfabe. And when you look at it that way, Paris Hilton is kind of like the Undertaker of that world. Yeah, I did just say that. There is perhaps no greater measure of a man than the sickness of his mosh skills. Money, fame, character, they all pale in comparison to one's ability to fuck shit up, burn this place to the ground while going front to back and side to side. And with sick mosh skills being so common in this day and age, it's easy to take it for granted. But years ago, we didn't have it so easy, and at that time, one man, one legend, took it upon himself to share his sick mosh skills with us all. That man's name...
Fucking Wild Steve, motherfuckers! Yo, what's up, you fucking pussies?
Yo, what's up, you fucking pussies? I am really excited about this episode of Tales from the Internet. I am really excited about it. I am really excited about it. Because now I'm going to start looking at some of my favorite internet videos of all fucking time. And I'm starting it off with Wild fucking Steve.
It's a fucking Wild Steve in the fucking building. You don't understand what time it is.
You gotta wonder how this guy got the nickname Wild Steve. I mean, clearly he's pretty fucking wild.
You don't know shit before you get your act out straight.
But, people usually don't take it upon themselves to just be like, yeah, that's Wild Steve over there. So either he gave this nickname to himself, or perhaps there's, in his circle of friends, there's another Steve that's not quite as another Steve who wasn't quite as wild, and at some point, a person was talking about Steve, or that Steve, and nobody could tell, so he had to be like, no, not regular Steve, fucking Wild Steve, and it stuck. You know, that's how nicknames happen, right?
You know, this is fucking Wild Steve, the heavyweight mosh skills mosh. You wanna get your mosh head straight in, all this bullshit? I don't think you want to, because, hey, this is what happens if you fuck with the real motherfucking Steve.
I'm really glad that he put this disclaimer there, just in case anybody was skeptical that this was, in fact, the real, authentic, bona fide Wild Steve and not some cheap facsimile. It's not regular Steve, it's not crazy Steve, it's motherfucking Wild Steve in the building. In the building.
If you wanna fuck with me, fuck you.
Look at that form. You see, the ordinary mosh warrior, they might be concerned about running around barefoot. Someone might step on their foot, you might get ringworm or some kind of fungus, but a true bona fide mosh warrior like Wild Steve has no fear. Wild Steve laughs in the face of Ringworm and eats foot fungus for dinner.
That's right.
Kicking over his great-grandmother's fine china, who the fuck cares? A man the caliber of Wild Steve cares not for the potential risk of kicking over his great-grandmother's fine china. Grandma's upset you broke her china? Fuck you, Grandma, I'll bring a fucking knife. This is how old ladies get fucking stabbed, by fucking with Wild Steve. However, as great as that knife is, and it is a great knife, and Wild Steve wields it with the utmost technique, I have to say that it's not the most interesting thing I've ever seen wielded during Sick Mosh. I remember several years ago, I was playing a show, I forgot what city it was in, but there's this dude with a prosthetic leg, and all of a sudden, the breakdown hits, and he takes his fucking leg off and starts hitting people with it. Like, it's nothing will ever top that in terms of mosh pit foreign objects go. If you can think of something, let me know, but I don't think anything will top the fucking prosthetic leg. Honestly, this is a man who needs no weapon to achieve the highest peaks of Sick Mosh. Look at that fucking body. Like it or not, this is what peak physical performance looks like. This is a body, it's not built for the beach, it's built for the fucking pit. Every inch of those giblets engineered. They're fucking hypnotic. And then finally, our man Steve leaves us with a warning.
You wanna fuck me? You wanna fuck with me? You get mushed.
You fuck me, you fuck with me.
You get mushed.
And this is what makes Wild Steve a man of the highest character. See, not only does he vow to see you in the pit if you fuck with him, he also issues his challenge to anyone who wants to fuck him.
You wanna fuck me?
See, most guys, they might be swayed by the proposition of a sexy lady trying to milk those fucking sloppy giblets. Doesn't matter if you're fucking Kim Kardashian, Wild Steve will still see you in the pit. And that's why Wild Steve is a fucking legend who will clearly go down in the Mosh Warrior Hall of Fame. Until next time, everybody get fucked. One afternoon in the early 2000s, Eric Fensler is spending his lunch break at the Virgin Megastore in Chicago near his job. He'd often go there to try out some music at the listening stations and see if there was anything good on sale. And this time, there was something good on sale. G.I. Joe the movie for just $5. He immediately bought it, and when he got home, ripped it to his computer, as well as the original cartoon PSAs that were included. Little did he know, this moment would alter the course of online culture forever. This is the story of the G.I. Joe PSA parodies. When I was a little kid, G.I. Joe was hands down my favorite cartoon. I had the VHS tape of G.I. Joe the movie that I taped off of TV, commercials and everything, and I'd pretty much watch it every single day. I very clearly remember I had this shitty toy guitar, and every time you got to that scene when the Royal Guards come up through the ice and start fighting the G.I. Joes, I would swing that shitty guitar around until one day it broke. And then Sergeant Slaughter shows up, and it's even more hype because now it's like G.I. Joe and wrestling together at last. In fact, let me go on a little detour and share this story about G.I. Joe and wrestling, because I'm never going to have another chance to share it on the channel. It's a real good story, but just how stupid I was as a kid. So one day I get up and my mother convinces me that King Kong Bundy, the wrestler King Kong Bundy, is terrorizing the neighborhood. He's just going around fighting people for some unknown reason. And then we go to this apartment where my mother's friend is fighting King Kong Bundy behind the door that we can't open. I don't know how they did it, but King Kong Bundy gets defeated. We don't see him, he must have escaped out the back or something, and in his wake he leaves behind an action figure. Like he dropped it like it was an RPG and we were looting him. The G.I. Joe character, Raptor. Somehow my mother convinces me that this character is actually also named King Kong Bundy. And I believed her despite the fact that I already knew how to read. In fact, I actually had learned how to read from the file cards on the back of G.I. Joe action figures. Which I guess was a major unintentional win for G.I. Joe since, you know, they did this thing where they tried to be educational. It was a really common thing actually for cartoons in that time period, but unlike a lot of them where they tried to work in the educational, moral themes into the actual plot, what G.I. Joe did was they just tacked on these PSAs at the end of the show. The PSAs generally had nothing to do with the episode. It'd be things like, hey kids, don't pet strange dogs. Don't walk on a frozen pond. But I'm sure, even showing you the clips of those PSAs, you're not thinking of those original lessons. As I'm sure you know, those PSAs took on a complete life of their own back in the early 2000s. That was when an aspiring young filmmaker named Eric Fensler made parodies of these PSAs. Parodies that, if you've been watching my Twitch stream, you kind of know that sometimes they just come out of my mouth. Like, there's never been a time in my life when I stopped quoting them for no reason. He turns them into things like, "Help computer."
Pork chop sandwiches.
Oh my dad.
If you know them, you probably first saw them in E-Bomb's world, but their story actually begins a bit earlier. So after Eric picked up his copy of G.I. Joe, the movie from the Virgin Megastore, and put it on his computer, he got to work on these PSA parodies mostly as just a project for fun. He definitely never intended for them to be this big viral internet sensation. In fact, he never even intended to upload them. In general, he just wasn't a very online guy, and he was kind of intimidated by the idea of making a website for this stuff, and whenever he had to, he would defer to his Uncle Joe. In fact, for quite a while, the only place you could see these was in real life. Around the time that he made these PSA parodies, Eric also made a short film with his friend and longtime collaborator, Doug Lussenhop. The film was entitled Printer Jam. After its completion, Printer Jam was screened at a number of film festivals and gallery showings. And when it was shown, it was often accompanied by these PSA parodies. Unsurprisingly, no matter what else aired at these film festivals, the PSA parodies stole the show. I mean, really, at this point, you're at the ground level of the invention of an entire style of comedy. People just hadn't really seen anything like this before. As Eric made more of these PSAs, they would have screenings for them at the Heaven Gallery in Chicago. The crowds were getting larger and larger, and eventually Eric also made VHS tapes of them so people could keep them. The success of these videos was contained entirely to the Flesh world until one day, the Heaven Gallery uploaded them to their website along with Printer Jam. It quickly became clear that the power of these videos would not be contained to Chicago. The growing popularity of these videos would become apparent as they would cause the Heaven Gallery website to exceed its monthly bandwidth, taking the entire website down. This distribution problem would be solved as E-Bomb's World and later on Heavy.com began to show these videos. And this is the point where I think most of us found it. In fact, I think this was actually the first thing that I saw on E-Bomb's World ever. It was either that or the Frederick Fox videos. Although the exact number is unknown, I think it's safe to say that probably millions of people watched these videos before they were even on YouTube. Eric has noted in interviews, though, that he was never really concerned about that sort of thing and had no idea how many people actually looked at them. The only reason he even had any kind of idea how popular they were was because he would frequently receive fan emails and E-Bomb's World constantly asked him to make more. And in total, he would make 25 of them between 2003 and 2004. They came out very sporadically. I recall checking the E-Bomb's World page for them constantly, and every once in a while there'd be a new one. It was like that same feeling of watching syndicated Dragon Ball Z back in the day, and then every several months there'd be a new episode translated. But then as the popularity of these videos came to a head, someone else became aware of them, and that someone else was Hasbro. Hasbro, who owned the copyrights to the cartoons and wasn't happy about this. So they went and sent cease and desist letters to both E-Bomb's World and to Eric himself. According to the cease and desist letter, these edited PSAs are unauthorized derivative works and therefore violate their copyright. They were also concerned that people may think that Hasbro is authorizing these PSAs. Because, you know, it's a realistic concern that somebody might think that Hasbro is warning kids about a computer man that wants you to stop all the downloading. And if Hasbro were to do such a thing, it would be disastrous for their brand. After receiving the letter, E-Bomb's World defiantly posted it to the top of the page where they continued to distribute the PSAs. Kind of ironic considering that only a few years later, YTM&D would be doing the same thing to E-Bomb's World.
You have now officially crossed the line.
But Eric didn't have the same bravado, and understandably so. Even though Eric was very clearly in the right here, I mean, I don't think you can get a more clear-cut case of fair use. Oftentimes, our legal system isn't really a battle of who's right and who's wrong, as much as it is, can you afford to defend yourself? And Eric could not afford to defend himself from the Hasbro Corporation. He explained what happened in an interview with WFMU. Hasbro sent the cease and desist letter and said, "Take them off the internet," or legal action. I talked to my Uncle Joe, who is also a lawyer, and he said I had a case, but do you want to go through it all? Do you have a lot of money, young man? I said, no, I don't have any money. I'm broke, so I took them off. No harm, no foul. Plus, I was on to making something different anyway, working a full-time job, a family to protect. It wasn't a big deal other than it had gotten all the way to them. I never thought Hasbro would see the PSAs. Then eventually YouTube came out and they were on other sites, so who cares? Try as they may, Hasbro couldn't contain these videos and Eric was on to bigger and better things. For example, you got those C-Lab promos on Adult Swim.
Dude, I'm telling you to get the fast one.
They were made in very much the same style, and once you watch them knowing that Eric made them, you're like, how did I not realize this was the same guy? And Eric's work with Adult Swim didn't end there. In 2004, Eric's friend Doug, the very same Doug who had directed Printer Jam, would apply for an internship on the Adult Swim show Tom Goes to the Mayor. They accept him for the job, and it turns out to be a lot more involved than your typical internship. His main focus was on getting behind-the-scenes footage from the show. Eventually, he edits together a video of this footage, and they like it so much that it becomes part of an actual episode. And according to Doug in an interview with Fast Company, if you look at the episode, you can kinda see where the seeds start to form. For Tim and Eric, awesome show, great job. So after this, Doug quickly graduates from intern to crew member. He takes on a more active role in the show, keeps editing, and eventually his collaboration continues into the awesome show. And along the way, Doug brings up his old pal and collaborator, Eric Fensler, of the famous G.I. Joe PSAs. So they wind up taking Eric as a writer for the show. He stays on for most of the show's run and continues to collaborate with Tim and Eric on other projects, such as this Flying Lotus music video. And in addition to his work on Tim and Eric, he's also worked on some commercials that you've probably seen. As a part of the Wyden & Kennedy ad agency, he's also written and directed advertisements for companies like Nike and Old Spice. And that's not to say that he only does commercial work anymore. As recently as a year ago, he appeared in a sketch with Doug, entitled Camping with Fudge. It's kind of a brief, nonsensical piece, and when Eric starts talking, you can't help but hear the connection to the G.I. Joe PSAs.
Close your mouth.
But anyway, that's the story of Eric Fensler and the G.I. Joe PSA parodies. A phenomenon that shaped the early days of online comedy and lit the path for where we are today. Some of the greatest memes throughout the years came when foreign language songs hit the English-speaking world. First example that probably comes to your mind is Gangnam Style, which honestly is hard to believe was already 8 years ago. And there's been so many others throughout the years, like The Seventh Element or Numa Numa. But it's been a while since I heard of anybody speak of one of the first foreign language songs to become a meme in the English-speaking internet. That song is Daler Mendy's Tunak Tunak Tun, which had a music video that was all over the place in the early 2000s. It took off for obvious reasons, with its goofy, easily imitated dance moves, its Sega Saturn type CG that reminds me of Myst, and several color-coded Daler Mendys getting into mischief like some sort of Sikh Power Rangers. And the story of how and why the video was made, as well as Daler Mendy's career following it, are full of all kinds of interesting twists and turns. So for this episode of Tales from the Internet, let's talk about Tunak Tunak Tun. Of all the meme songs that we've had throughout the years, Daler Mendy's Tunak Tunak Tun is one of my favorites just because it's a good-ass song. I have absolutely no idea what he's saying, but I enjoy it all the same. I guess that's just a function of growing up with metal. You get used to the idea of liking a song even though you don't know what the words are. The vocals are just another thing you use to make noise happen. But it's not as if Tunak Tunak Tun made him either. Daler Mendy was an extremely popular musician in India well before the West ever heard of him, well before we got to see him descend from the skies as each element like some kind of Punjabi Planeteers. And as he told it on his website, Daler Mendy viewed the music video as kind of a fuck you to his critics. A few media houses came up with this analogy that Daler Mendy is super hit because he has pretty women in his videos. Daler Mendy decided to shut them up, and how? There was no woman in the video. It seems like kind of a strange criticism to me. I mean, yeah, sure, hot women sell, but they're kind of all over the place, and surely Daler Mendy wasn't the only one to have hot women in his music videos. And furthermore, I don't know about you, but me personally, my enjoyment of hot women, if I want to ogle hot women, the presence of a jolly, robust Indian man doesn't in any way elevate the experience or really even encourage it. But regardless, he had to go shut them up, so he goes and creates the first Indian music video to use blue screen technology. With the biggest budget to date of 25 million rupees. No women allowed, just 4 Daler Mendys. And actually, according to his website, there was supposed to be a 5th miniature Dollar Mendy, but he didn't make it to the final cut because of time constraints. I never thought there would come a time in my life where I felt nostalgia for this caliber of CG. Like, it takes me back to a time where you'd see stuff that looked like that playing on ads for game design colleges on G4. It really does look like something out of Myst. Watch out, Dollar, don't get trapped in a book. And sure enough, this amazing music video was enough to shut up Dollar's critics. This song was a massive commercial success and basically solidified him as India's #1 pop star. And keep in mind, this is all going down in 1998, which I guess the legacy of Kane tier CG was a clue, but this was a long time before the Western world would ever even get a glimpse of this song. In fact, it's kind of murky when or how this song actually managed to bridge itself over into the English-speaking world, because a lot of that stuff is simply not archived. Personally, I'm not 100% on it, but I'm pretty sure that the first place I saw it was on E-Bomb's World, which of course means it could have come from absolutely anywhere. But the earliest instance I've seen of someone memeing on it is from 2001. It was on a website called lordofdance.com, which has thankfully been archived in all of its fantastic Web 1.0 glory, featuring a guy named Danielle Gormley dancing. Tunak Tunak Tune is a classic that will not only stand the test of time, but will also stand the test of superglue. Go ahead, hang it from a steel girder, I dare you. Based on popular indie pop star Dollar Mendy's video. Click here to view the original. It emphasizes what was best about his work. It was really good, says the New York Tribunal. Wow, says Rolling Stone. Now with audio fixed. And note that the link that Daniel provided for the original music video goes to an English language website on Indian pop culture. If I had to guess, I'd say that this website, Teen Station, is probably how the video first made its way to an American audience. Daniel's interpretation of the video features him dancing to Mendy's song in a variety of outfits of his own, and several more of these parodies would pop up throughout the early to mid 2000s, reaching its peak at some point in 2006. Come on, how are you gonna call it the Caucasian edition and you got an Asian dude right there? Wait, is that a young wavy web surf? There was even a World of Warcraft parody that led to it actually being added into the game as an emote. And the phenomenon would take another turn in 2007. That was when a man named Mike Sutton, more popularly known as Buffalax, got to work on his YouTube channel. Buffalax would take Tunak Tunak Tune as well as a number of other Indian songs and songs from other countries and make videos of them with misheard lyrics. The series became so popular that people began to use the word Buffalax to describe this type of video. And granted, his Tunak Tunak Tune video wasn't as popular as some of his others. Personally, I enjoy his version of a different Dollar Mendy song, Shira Ra. But my favorite, of course, and the one you're probably the most familiar with, is Benny Lava. Unfortunately, a lot of Buffalax's work, along with his entire channel, is wiped from YouTube due to copyright issues. However, his entire library is available on the Internet Archive. Considering that Tunak Tunak Tune was released in 1998 and had its gradual ascent into memedom that lasted throughout the mid-2000s, it had perhaps the greatest sustained period of popularity experienced by any pop song. Memes just lasted longer in those days, but eventually they all fade away. And new meme songs just come and go and take its place throughout the years. Tunak Tunak Tune walked so that Gangnam Style could run. But while his profile wouldn't remain at the same heights as they were in the English-speaking world, in India he remained a star. He worked consistently throughout the decades, working on not only his own music, but several movie and television scores. Unfortunately, however, the next time much of the Western world would hear about him would be under much less positive circumstances. On March 16th of 2018, Dollar Mendy was sentenced to 2 years in prison for human trafficking charges. That's a hell of a crazy headline, and it wound up trending on Twitter that day, reacquainting us with Dollar Mendy in the worst way possible. But that being said, there is a lot of misinformation that's circulated around this story. Because you see, a lot of people have interpreted this news to mean that Dollar Mendy was involved somehow in sex trafficking, kidnapping, prostitution, like some kind of Indian Epstein. Sometimes in conversation when people remember him, they'll be like, hey, did you hear about how the Tunak guy was involved in sex trafficking? And I think this idea circulates from the game of telephone we play, where you see that headline, you don't read the article, so you don't really know what it's about, so you just remember it and tell people, and eventually it becomes fact. So here's what actually happened. The case was brought up in 2003 against both Daler and his brother Shamser Singh, who passed away in 2017. In the initial complaint, a man claimed to have paid them a massive sum of money in order to be brought to either the US or Canada as a part of their touring dance troupe. Once they got there, they would stay in the country illegally. Kind of like the illegal immigration version of when a local band plays a show and they have their friend grab a piece of gear and walk into the venue and they're like, oh yeah, he's crew. And according to the court documents, they were confirmed to have done this with 10 people in San Francisco and in New Jersey. And after the case was filed, 35 more people came forward and said they too paid them this massive sum of money and they too were never brought to the US. And while yeah, these are serious crimes, in my opinion, they don't really come close to approaching the level of what sex trafficking is. Which of course, contrary to some people's understanding, is not something he was ever even accused of, let alone convicted of. In any case, Daler Mehndi was let out on bail and to my knowledge has never served any prison time for the sentence. He maintains his innocence, and after filing his appeal, the judge decided to suspend his 2-year sentence. And in the meantime, he has been busy. All throughout this time, he's continued to make music for films, and he's also been active on his YouTube channel, including a new series in which he plays his favorite songs from his home studio. Would you look at that golden throne? But anyway, that's the story of Daler Mehndi and Tunak Tune, a song that has an important place not just in music history, but in internet history. One of the internet's very first viral songs. In 1996, a doom metal band from Moldova named Inferialis released a demo tape including 2 songs, Broken Piece of the Sun and It Was a Yarn. Despite their limited discography, they managed to build quite a reputation for themselves before ultimately splitting up in 1998. But that's not where the story ends. Soon after, 2 members of this band, the vocalist Petru and their keyboardist Dan, would go on to form a Europop group named Ozone. Among this pop group's many accomplishments, perhaps their greatest, was creating the track behind what was perhaps the most famous viral video of the mid-2000s. What I'm talking about, of course, is Numa Numa. So for today's episode, let's take a closer look at Numa Numa, what happened to it, and some little mysteries surrounding its origin that always puzzled me. Believe it or not, I've actually been enjoying TikTok for the past year or so. I mean, for sure, there's a lot of absolute garbage on there, but you use it a little bit and the algorithm figures out what you want to watch pretty quickly. And it's fun to be able to make different kinds of content that don't really fit on this channel. That being said, one thing that I never understood with TikTok, the whole lip syncing thing. I just don't understand the appeal of mouthing yourself, singing songs, or even more like lip syncing, mouthing yourself, doing dialogue for movies and shit like that. But then I got to thinking about how that sort of content has a pedigree that goes back way further than TikTok or even Musical.ly. I'm talking all the way back to 2004. It was that year that a fella named Gary Brolsma, who had a reputation of whipping up kooky videos for his friends, had another one up his sleeve. Numa Numa. A video that in some way is kind of like the first TikTok. Featuring, of course, Gary dancing and lip-syncing to the Moldovan pop song Dragostea Dinta by Ozone. He never intended for anybody to see this outside of his group of friends. But then one day, a week after he made it, he decides to upload it to Newgrounds for shits and giggles. He figures it'll get downloaded to oblivion, never to be seen again. Of course, as you most certainly know, he was very wrong. It accumulates millions and millions of views, eventually becoming the Guinness Book of World Records holder for the most popular internet video, spawning several imitations and parodies of its own, each of them often gaining millions of views on their own. And this all propels Gary to being, at this point in time, the most famous guy from a meme. But before we get to the rest of Gary's story, there's something else that's always puzzled me about this. Despite the song not having been popular in the US before the Numa Numa meme, despite me having no connection whatsoever to Moldova or Romania, I knew that I had heard this song before that. If I recall correctly, at the time, I was a big fan of J-pop groups like Morning Musume and all their little offshoots. I know, I'm a huge weeb, we've gone over this before. And somehow I had downloaded this song, the Numa Numa song, Dragasti Denta, as part of a collection of J-pop songs. It doesn't make much sense because, Romania is not a part of Japan. But thinking about it, it was also likely to me that Gary, also an American with no connection to Moldova, but also a person who is presumably very online, probably found the song in a similar way. But how exactly does this happen? So, after exiting the Moldovan metal scene in 1998, Dan Balin, formerly of the doom metal band Inferialis, creates his pop group Ozone because, believe it or not, he likes money, and it works. I mean, the first album does kinda whatever, but then they move to Bucharest, Romania, and the second album kills it. This leads to their third album, Disco Zone, which contains Dragasti Denta, at release in 2003, their biggest hit to date. Number 1 in Romania, and it gets releases all across Europe and eventually makes its way to Japan, where it's known as Koi no Mayahi. And with that Japanese release, this song has its first entanglement with meme culture, on Japan's 2-channel image board. So on 2channel there is a cat meme, Mona. Even if you're not Japanese, it's very possible that you've seen it around. And part of the character's popularity involved dance animations set to music. One such animation would be made by a user named Ikari using Koi no Mayahi. And as it turns out in a later interview, Gary did reveal that he had first heard the song in a Japanese cat animation, vindicating my theory of the Weeb to Numa Numa pipeline. But that reveal was much further down the line, as initially after the popularity of Numa Numa, Gary wasn't so inclined to do interviews. When Numa Numa popped off, it almost felt kind of like a sequel to the Star Wars Kid, which had gone viral a year prior. Hell, Gary and the Star Wars Kid even kind of looked a bit alike. And if you watched my Star Wars Kid video, you know that the Star Wars Kid wasn't too happy about that meme. In fact, he hated it and wanted to do whatever he could to escape from it. And at first, Gary was in the same boat. In an article by the New York Times shortly after the video blew up, it discusses how Gary spent his time moping around his house, having canceled all the appearances he was initially happy to make. These days, Mr. Brolsma shuttles between the house and his job at Staples, his family said. He is distraught, embarrassed. His grandmother, Margaret Telkis, quoted him as saying just the other day, "I want this to end." It puzzled a lot of the people around him because previously he was always making videos trying to entertain people. For example, they mentioned these parodies of Prozac commercials that he used to make, which I guess is at this point a piece of Numa Numa lost media. Perhaps it was a case of the dog who finally caught the car and didn't know what to do with it. But his friends and family were encouraging him to try and live this up. One of his friends told him, "This is your one chance to be famous, embrace it." While his grandfather simply remarked, "I don't know what's wrong with him." A comment from Gary's friend Randall would highlight another aspect of the story. "He's been entertaining us for years," he said. So, it's kinda like the rest of the world is realizing that Gary can make you smile. And over the course of the next year, it was this sentiment that would prevent the story from being Star Wars Kid Part 2. When retelling the course of the year after Numa Numa, Gary would mention that it was messages from fans that helped pull him out of this funk. In particular, he recalled a message from a soldier in the Middle East who had mentioned how Numa Numa had helped brighten up his mood. And through that, Gary realized that this isn't something he should be trying to run away from, but rather something he should embrace. And thus, he decided to lean back into it, leading to his return in September of 2006. That's when he released Numa Numa, aka Numa Numa 2. This song, written by a songwriter named Chad Russell in Russian with lyrics that are about a children's song about a hunter and a bunny, lays the base for Gary to Numa Numa once again, now with cameo appearances by the members of his band The Nowadays, who had themselves just released a pair of songs on MySpace. I'm not gonna lie, when this song first came out, it kind of felt like that episode of The Simpsons where Homer bowls a perfect game and he just can't let it go. But in the years following the release of this song, I've found that the new Numa Numa, hey, like that gets stuck in my head way more than the original song does. Gary also held a $45,000 Numa contest in which it was up to the viewers to create their own Numa Numa videos to go with the new Numa. It would receive 328 entries in total, with the grand prize winner Keith3D, who actually bears a little bit of a resemblance to Gary himself, creating a video with stop-motion animation of pretzels and various household objects. And in the coming years, Gary would expand his scope outside the realm of music. It was on October 1st of 2008 that Gary would announce the next phase of his career with this video.
Don't do it. Oh, no.
Ladies and gentlemen, comedy is saved. The Numa Network has arrived. And now it wasn't just Gary, but Gary and friends. A cast of characters like Dr. Depend, Christy Storms, and Tobias. In fact, most of the Numa Network videos involve these other characters with only occasional appearances by Gary. And of course, predictably, the Gary videos were by far the most viewed ones on the channel. By 2010, Gary was speaking in interviews about how he wanted to expand the scope of the Numa Network, creating a site that was something he compared to Funny or Die, or College Humor. And indeed, a website was created containing articles and celebrity interviews and stuff like that, although not much of it has been archived. All things considered, I think it's actually pretty impressive how long he kept the ball rolling on this. It remained active until 2013, with the last official Numa Network video being a very brief interview with James Hong. I mean, I think to go from owning literally the most viewed video that existed online to, you know, a few thousand views here and there, I think most people would give up in a week or less. But Gary kept this project going for 5 years. But it makes sense when you remember that before Numa Numa, this was a guy who's just happy to make videos that only his friends were ever supposed to see. Then there's a little bit of a weird shift from that point on. The channel suddenly becomes something called Dork Daily, beginning with a sketch called How to Use a Public Restroom. Then there's an interview with Malcolm in the middle, and a few years passed until their next sketch in November of 2016, the top 5 ways to change your Facebook friends' political positions. This obviously got much more of a reaction, especially with it being 2016, with people wondering why Numa Numa is suddenly doing politics. People had theories that the channel had been hacked or stolen or purchased by some kind of mega corporation, but Dork Daily replied to such comments, directing people to Gary's current website and saying that this project was a labor of love that didn't make any money, nor was it intended to. And in fact, the Dork Daily iteration of the Numa Network still continues to this day, with several videos released the month of me making this video, and with a website containing general geek culture news and editorials. As for Gary himself, he's still pretty actively making music, including new songs by the Nowadays, a solo album entitled Haunted House of Pancakes, and probably my favorite of the stuff he's produced, these videos on YouTube that are represented just by a Shrek picture and an emoji. These songs have a very Super NES type feel. In particular, they remind me a lot of Tokimeki Memorial or Sailor Moon Another Story, so if that's your vibe, definitely worth checking out. Oh, and how could I forget, of course, there's a Numa Numa NFT. It was sold in June of 2021 by NetGems. In a brief interview with BuzzFeed, he explains that despite the massive popularity of Numa Numa, like a lot of other early internet stars, he barely made any money at all throughout the years off of this. And he mentioned that currently his family was struggling with financial issues and health issues, so he was hoping that the NFT could help them make ends meet. Ultimately, this NFT would sell to a user named Worth for 3.15 Ethereum, which at the time of me making this video is a little over $4,000. Worth is now trying to sell the Numa Numa NFT for 420 Ethereum, a little over $1.7 million. Not sure how that's gonna work out, but we'll see. In any case, Gary Brolsma, the Numa Numa guy, is a rare example of an early internet celebrity who managed to maintain a presence throughout the years without completely losing his mind, so hats off to him and good luck to his family. But anyway, that's the story for now. If you like this video, check out my video about the God Warrior. I'm out.